Chapter 1851, Total Military Force. 2. They had joined forces and upgraded the high-level Divine Kingdom under them to a beginner-grade Master God-tier kingdom the day before. Over the past 2 days, they had become more proficient in their methods. They believed that today and in the future, they would be able to establish more beginner-grade Master God-tier kingdoms in the Crimson Great Cosmos. K. At this moment, a succubus true God-tier quickly walked over and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, I have good news to report to Your Majesty." "Speak." Zhou 15 said without looking up. "Yes, Your Majesty. I just received news that the high-level Divine Kingdoms Demon Dragon Divine Kingdom, Hidden Dragon Divine Kingdom, and Black Heaven Divine Kingdom have officially upgraded their Divine Kingdom factions to beginner-grade Master God Realm factions. Should we immediately lead our troops to attack?" The succubus true God-tier said expectantly and nervously. "Really?" Zhou 15 and Zhou Shiki suddenly looked up at the succubus true God-tier with shining eyes. "Yes, Your Majesty." The succubus true God-tier said respectfully to Zhou 15. As for Zhou 15, who looked exactly like Zhou 15, in the eyes of this succubus true God-tier, he was only dressed like a minister, so he did not arouse his suspicion. He only sighed at how good the relationship between this minister and His Majesty was. Zhou 15 and Zhou Shiki looked at each other with smiles in their eyes. "This day has finally come," Zhou 15 said. "I finally don't have to rely on myself to create a beginner-grade Master God-tier Lord faction." Zhou Shiki sighed. "Since a new beginner-grade Master God-tier kingdom has been born, let's split into 2 armies today. One army conquered 3 beginner-grade Master God-tier kingdoms, while the other army brought lifestyle professionals and treasures to help the 6 advanced divine kingdoms under our command advance to beginner-grade Master God-tier kingdoms." Zhou 15 said. "It's decided." Zhou 17 nodded slightly. Then, they did not waste any time and immediately made arrangements. Then, he didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Zhou 11 and Zhou Shire were leading the Supreme God team under them to explore the deepest depths of Tianjun's corpse. In less than 4 hours, they had encountered several Chaos Fiends. After killing them, they had also obtained more than 20,000 units of Chaos Divine treasures. A silver life form appeared in front of them after advancing for about a light year. This silver life form emitted the aura of a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert. After seeing them appear, it first took a rough look before saying, "This is not a place you Supreme Gods can explore. Leave this place quickly and I can spare your lives." "What if we don't leave?" Zhou 11 said with a smile. "This is the first time I've seen someone who can grow to the level of a Supreme God but doesn't know how to respect the strong." The silver life form looked at Zhou 11 in surprise and said. Then, without another word, he raised his right hand. A terrifying space-time violent storm suddenly appeared where Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 were. The space-time violent storm was controlled extremely exquisitely by the silver life form. It only affected Zhou 11, Zhou 12 and the Supreme God team led by them without affecting other places. The silver life form did not want to cause too much of a commotion. In the deepest depths of the land of Tianjun's corpse, there were many powerhouses that even he feared. If he attracted those powerhouses, he would not have an easy time. He only wanted to casually destroy these reckless Supreme Gods and continue his treasure-hunting journey. The place where Tianjun's corpse was suspected to contain an incomplete inheritance of a powerhouse with a will that transcended. As a Supreme Will Realm powerhouse, he was naturally extremely envious of such an inheritance. However, just as he thought that he had eliminated this group of Supreme Gods who did not know how to respect the strong, he suddenly discovered something. His eyes suddenly widened in disbelief. Because he had seen it. The quasi-Supreme Will Realm Zhou 11 who had just provoked him had actually instantly activated a domain. Under the protection of this domain, the space-time violent storm that he had just used did not hurt them or the Supreme Gods at all. Just as he was in disbelief, he saw Zhou 11 gently spit out the word king again. Then, his realm and pressure suddenly increased. Low-level Supreme Will Realm. Mid-level Supreme Will Realm. High-level Supreme Will Realm. In the blink of an eye, his strength had actually increased from the quasi-Supreme Will Realm to the high-level Supreme Will Realm. It was already equivalent to his strength. The silver life form was stunned. What kind of secret technique was this that could actually instantly advance a grade 4 Supreme God to a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert? An idea suddenly popped up in his mind, instantly making his eyes burn. "You have the inheritance of the will." He looked at Zhou 11 greedily and said. Zhou 11 raised his eyebrows and instantly understood why the other party said that. This was treating the king and the land of earth, a minister of the king as the will inheritance. So what if I am? So what if I'm not? Zhou 11 said. I don't need to answer you, nor do I need to ask you again. The space-time will smiled faintly. After I investigate your past, I will know everything about you. With that, his body suddenly disappeared from the spot. In the next second, he was already in front of Zhou 11. He lightly slapped Zhou 11's head. However, Zhou 11's expression was very calm seeing this scene. At some point in time, a high-level will holy artifact in the form of a silver glove had appeared in his hand. He punched at the will of space-time. The power of the myriad method star palm suddenly erupted from the will of time and space with the fist as the center. That extremely terrifying power even caused traces of spatial distortion and destruction in Tianjun's corpse. The location of Tianjun's corpse was extremely high, almost equivalent to a mystic realm with a transcendent will. Therefore, the space here was extremely stable. Even ordinary high-level Supreme Will Realm experts could not easily destroy this place when they used their full strength. This Grade 4 Supreme God could actually use a secret technique to raise his strength to such a level? He finally realized that something was wrong. However, it was too late. Bang! With one palm, Zhou 11 sent the will of time and space flying. In midair, the will spat out a mouthful of blood. After a Supreme God advanced to the Supreme Will Realm, the origin power of their will turned into their own flesh and blood. To a Supreme Will Realm powerhouse, even the slightest loss of their flesh and blood was an extremely serious loss. The mouthful of will blood that was spat out was equivalent to tens of thousands of years of his bitter cultivation. However, he couldn't care less about the loss of this mouthful of blood of will. This was because he could sense an extremely terrifying sense of danger from Zhou 11. The subconscious was telling him that if he didn't run, what awaited him would be the death crisis he didn't want to face the most. Ever since he cultivated, he had experienced many dangers, so he was rather decisive. After sensing the warning from his subconscious, the space-time will turned around and fled without hesitation. Trying to run. Zhou 11 smiled and sent out 2 more palm strikes. Boom! Boom! 2 terrifying palms that had destroyed a tenth of the great cosmos shot towards the space-time will. When the space-time will saw the huge palm behind it, it was immediately shocked. Top Supreme Will Realm strength. This was definitely the strength of a top Supreme Will Realm expert. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to blast out such a huge palm strike. He gritted his teeth. They saw space-time suddenly distort beside him. Immediately after, they saw 2 identical space-time wills fly out. These 2 wills of space-time were even stronger than his main body. It was already infinitely close to the peak stage Supreme Will Realm. A future self summoned from my other timeline. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. His expression did not change. And what good would that do? He would also be no match for him. Chapter 1852, Subduing a Supreme Will Realm Expert. 1. The will of space-time thought so too. Compared to the true peak stage Supreme Will Realm strength, the two seemed to be similar, but the difference was actually extremely great. The will of space-time naturally understood this principle, so he directly said, "Stop him for me. It's a little troublesome." The 2 summoned wills of time and space felt the pressure emanating from Zhou 11's body and their expressions turned ugly. However, they were summoned by the will of time and space with their own will skills after all. They could not go against the will of time and space, so they could only brace themselves and hold back. They used their respective defensive will skills, hoping to block Zhou Zhou's myriad method star palm. They used the 9 realms barrier as a will skill. This was a will skill created by the space-time will after it advanced to mid-stage Supreme Will Realm. Later on, after it advanced to the high-level Supreme Will Realm, this will skill was also comprehended by him to the high-level Supreme Will Realm. This will skill could superimpose the space-time of 9 different timelines and erupt with a huge defensive power. It could block the will skill attacks of most high-level Supreme Will Realm experts. Now that these 2 alternate timeline main bodies were used together and stacked together, they could already erupt with a defense that could defend against the offense of a top Supreme Will Realm expert. The 2 alternate timeline main bodies of the space-time wills also sensed this and immediately revealed looks of joy. They felt that they should have a chance to block Zhou 11's attack. Then, they would be able to escape safely. Audiobook.com. When the time comes, the sky was limitless. Revenge could be planned slowly. And yet, when the first myriad method star palm landed on the barrier of the 9 worlds, their expression immediately changed. This was because they could sense that after the myriad method star palm landed on the barrier of the 9 worlds, it immediately erupted with extremely shocking power. They felt that the means that could defend against the attack of a top Supreme Will Realm expert were actually about to explode. When the second myriad method star palm followed closely, the 9 realms barrier that they had forcefully held up instantly could not hold on and exploded, disappearing. The second myriad method star palm even slapped the 2 alternate timelines of the will of time and space. The 2 alternate timeline main bodies instantly exploded and died. Before they died, they sent a message to the will of space-time. Bastard! This guy is not at the peak stage Supreme Will Realm at all. He clearly already has the strength of a powerhouse close to the willpower realm. The will of time and space was escaping. When he saw that the 2 alternate timelines that he had summoned could actually use top-notch barriers of the 9 worlds, he was instantly overjoyed. He felt that he had a chance of escaping. However, when he saw that Zhou Zhou had casually shattered the barrier of the 9 realms that he had high hopes for, he was instantly stunned. Then, he felt deep fear and panic. Quasi will transcendent expert. This concept flashed through his mind without the reminder from the main bodies of the 2 alternate timelines. Another thought appeared in his mind. Run. The space-time will abandoned all thoughts that it should not have. There was only one idea left in its mind. That was to run. He had no choice but to run. Facing Zhou 11, who had the strength of a quasi-will, once he fell into his hands, he would not be able to resist at all. All he could do was try his best to escape to have a chance of survival. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt a shocking sense of danger behind him. He did not even have time to turn around to check before his body was struck by the myriad method star palm. Then, his entire divine body was beaten up by this palm. He saw a huge palm appear above his head out of thin air. Then, the huge palm grabbed him and disappeared. When he blinked again, he realized that he had already arrived in front of Zhou 11 and Zhou 12. He coughed twice and coughed out 2 mouthfuls of blood again. Then, he tried to use a space-time will technique to escape. Then, he realized that he seemed to be in an absolute domain. None of the will skills that he used could take effect in this absolute domain. He laughed bitterly and said to Zhou 11 and Zhou 12, "Since things have come to this, kill me." Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 smiled. Then, Zhou 11 said with a faint smile, "Do you really want to die that much? Would you be willing to let me live otherwise?" The space-time will asked. He felt that he was in existence at the high-level will realm. Unless he had absolute control over him, he would never leave a time bomb like him by his side. Then, he thought of something and smiled. "Don't tell me you want to take me in as your subordinate. Oh, you have the aura of a lord. If you have such thoughts, it's quite normal. However, I'm at the Supreme Will Realm. Are you sure you can control me?" "You're right." Zhou 11 smiled. "But this emperor is sure." The space-time will's pupils constricted. An idea naturally surfaced in his mind. The other party probably really had a method to control him, a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert. Even though this sounded unbelievable, a quasi-Supreme Will Realm existence actually wanted to surpass a major level and control a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert. However, since the other party could even take out a will transcendent inheritance in a method to control a Supreme Will Realm expert, it seemed understandable. Chapter 1853, Subduing a Supreme Will Realm Expert. 2. At the thought of this, he could not help but fall silent. From time to time, he had a conflicted expression. Zhou 11 looked at his unpredictable expression for a while and said calmly, "This emperor doesn't have that much time for you to consider. I'll give you another 10 seconds. If you're willing to follow this emperor and become his subordinate, this emperor can naturally spare your life. You can even recover from all your injuries and give you a chance to improve. However, if you're unwilling to follow this emperor won't force you. This emperor will personally send you to your death. Think about it yourself." The space-time will smiled bitterly and said, "Since your majesty has said so, if I still don't realize it, it's time for me to die. Greetings, your majesty." Towards the end, his expression turned solemn. At the same time, he felt a little uneasy. He did not know what method the other party would use to control him, a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert. At the same time, Audiobook.com Zhou 11 also silently agreed to the other party's request to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. The moment he agreed, the supreme rank, the only Lord Talent Holy King, instantly felt the addition of an upper-level Supreme Will Realm expert, the will of space and time. The terrifying power of the Lord Talent immediately descended on the will of space-time, modifying it and increasing his loyalty to Zhou Zhou. It was visible to the naked eye. The will of time and space looked at Zhou 11 with respect. In the end, it even had the fanatical feeling of a believer looking at their god spirit. Zhou 11 smiled and was very satisfied. The only Lord Talent was fierce. It directly increased the other party's loyalty to 95 points. Even though they were not at the level of fanatic believers, they would not betray him easily. It was already a level of trust. At the same time, he felt a little uneasy. This space-time will was the 11th Supreme Will Realm subordinate under him. At the same time, he was the only subordinate of the high-level Supreme Will Realm. In the future, when his subordinates faced some powerful enemies, he did not have to immediately save them. The will of space-time could help him and help his subordinates deal with some difficult enemies. However, this was not enough. He needed more subordinates at the Supreme Will Realm. It would be best if they were subordinates of the Supreme Will Realm like the Space-Time Will, or even stronger than the Space-Time Will. Tell this Emperor. Are there any other Supreme Will Realm experts nearby? Zhou 11 asked. Yes, Your Majesty. I'm good at space-time and escape and reconnaissance. The exact location of the Supreme Will Realm experts that I know alone totals 5. If we can capture all of them and become His Majesty's subordinates, His Majesty will know the locations of more Supreme Will Realm experts. When the time comes, His Majesty can subdue them one by one. The will of time and space was stunned when it heard this. Then, it seemed to have guessed something and revealed a mysterious smile as it said respectfully. Zhou 11 smiled as well. You really know what this Emperor means. Bring this Emperor over. I'll add a few more colleagues for you. Yes, Your Majesty. The will of space-time said respectfully. This strange joy of dragging someone down made the smile on his lips grow wider. Just as he was about to get up, he grunted. His face turned pale, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He could not help but cough twice. Zhou 11's myriad method star palm had caused he too much damage. Wait a minute. Before you serve this Emperor will treat your injuries first. Zhou 11 immediately said. Your Majesty, there's no need. I'll slowly recover from this kind of injury. It won't affect me from leading the way. The will of space-time politely declined. One needed at least a transcendent level treasure to heal one's injuries in a short period of time. The space-time will that had just joined did not think that it was qualified to obtain a treasure of that level. That was a transcendent level treasure. Even His Majesty, who had obtained the inheritance of a transcendent level of willpower, probably valued it extremely. How could he give it to him? Zhou 11 was too lazy to speak and directly threw a red fruit to him. This is the blood heart fruit. It's a fruit of the low-level will transcendence realm. It's specially used to recover the injuries of the will body. It was originally meant for willpower transcendent experts. After you use it, you should be able to instantly recover from your injuries. Zhou 11 said. The will of time and space was immediately stunned. He looked at the fruit in front of him that emitted a majestic willpower recovery power. He didn't dare imagine that this fruit was for him. At that time, he was hesitant to accept the fruit. The supreme gods behind Zhou 11 and 12 could not help but laugh. For outsiders who had come into contact with His Majesty's generosity for the first time, this reaction of the space-time will was too normal. Eat, my lord. A quasi-supreme will realm expert smiled and said, this fruit might be very precious to other experts, but to His Majesty's wealth, it's still presentable. Please remember His Majesty's kindness. When Zhou 11 heard this, he secretly gave a thumbs up. Okay. Thank you for your reward, Your Majesty. The will of time and space stopped struggling after hearing this. After taking the fruit, it immediately swallowed it. The blood heart fruit melted the moment it entered his mouth. The will of time and space instantly felt a large amount of pure willpower and origin power erupt from it and quickly sweep through his body. The injuries that he had suffered from Zhou 11's myriad method star palm immediately began to recover at an extremely fast speed. In less than a moment, the injuries on the space-time will had actually recovered. He looked at his healthy body and revealed a look of surprise. As expected of a treasure with a low-level will. It's actually so effective. How could it not be good? Zhou 11 complained in his heart. This blood heart fruit was originally used to heal experts with transcendent wills. Now that it was used to treat a high-level supreme will realm expert like you, it naturally had an immediate effect. Come on. Bring this emperor and his subordinates to see the next supreme will realm. The Zhou 11 said. Yes, your majesty. The will of time and space seemed to be looking forward to the scene of other supreme will realm experts falling into Zhou 11's hands even more than Zhou 11. Therefore, he did not delay at all. He immediately used space-time methods to lead Zhou 11 and his subordinates to the next supreme will realm expert. As the supreme will realm expert closest to them, this second supreme will realm expert's strength was at the mid-level supreme will realm. His name was Mara Will. Mara. In the universe where he lived, it meant that he had reached the peak and become a supreme king. The path of willpower was not bad. This will that continuously climbed the peak of the cultivation path was the will of many supreme will realm experts in the ultimate void great cosmos. Therefore, there were many inheritances that could be referenced. The more inheritances there were, the easier it was to give birth to supreme will realm experts on this path. At this point, the supreme will realm experts on this path had already been rolled up beyond recognition. Zhou 11 did not care what the other party's path was. It was as if he was dealing with the will of time and space. He first subdued the other party, then threatened him to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and become its martial arts. The other party was actually unwilling at the beginning. What to do? Zhou 11 had no choice but to use his top-notch strength to beat him up again. Only after he was about to die did he beg for mercy and say that he wanted to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and become a supreme will realm offering of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Zhou 11 immediately agreed to the addition of the 12th Supreme Will Realm Cultivator. Then, he also gave him a low-level transcendent level treasure as a precious medicine for him to recover. After he completely recovered, he looked at Zhou 12 with the same gaze as the will of space-time. When Zhou 12 saw the other party's expression, he could not help but click his tongue. At the same time, an extremely picturesque scene appeared in his mind. First, he had to reduce the other party's health to a critical level, then forcefully subdue it with special methods. This felt very similar to a game on Earth. He shook his head and threw away the useless thoughts in his mind. Then, he asked the other party if he knew the location of the other Supreme Will Realm experts. Chapter 1854, Massive Amount of Loots. 1. The other party immediately revealed the location of the Supreme Willpower practitioner that he knew. After comparing it with the willpower of time and space, a smile appeared on Zhou 11's face. Another one appeared. There were 5 more Supreme Will Realm experts that could be captured. Let's go. Zhou 11 gave the order and everyone set off again. They arrived at another Supreme Will Realm. However, it was a pity that this place had become an empty nest. The other party seemed to have left for some reason. Zhou 11 did not mind. With so many Supreme Will Realm experts, it was normal for a few to be empty. Then, they went to the next Supreme Will Realm expert. This time, the other party was still cultivating in his original position. The process of subduing this Supreme Will Realm expert was very simple. This was because the other party was only a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert. When the 2 Supreme Will Realm experts beside him revealed their strength at the same time, before Zhou 11 could even attack, this low-level Supreme Will Realm expert directly surrendered without even resisting. Of course, resistance was also the most useless. It might even bring about a fatal disaster. The other party made a clear decision. Then, they went to the next Supreme Will Realm expert. This Supreme Will Realm expert was the first top Supreme Will Realm expert they had encountered. He was even stronger than the first Supreme Will Realm, the Will of Space-Time he had encountered. In the beginning, this top Supreme Will Realm existence did not care about Zhou 11's lineup at all. On the surface, Zhou 11 and them did not even have a top-notch Supreme Will Realm expert after all. It was not until the few Supreme Will Realm experts that Zhou 11 sent out were all defeated by the other party that Zhou 11 had no choice but to personally subdue the other party that the expression of this top Supreme Will Realm expert finally changed. This was because he sensed a fatal danger from Zhou 11. Without any hesitation, he fled. However, it was easily controlled by Zhou 11 with all the land in the world belongs to the king and the myriad method star palm. Are you willing to surrender? He asked. This top Supreme Will Realm expert laughed out loud. A mere quasi-Supreme Will Realm expert wants me, a top Supreme Will Realm expert, to become your subordinate by relying on some secret techniques to increase my strength. Dream on. I'd rather die than submit to you. Just you wait. One day, I will personally Huff! Zhou 11 calmly crushed the other party's head and killed him. The surrounding Supreme Gods and Supreme Will Realm experts looked at Zhou 11 like believers looking at their god spirits. It was incomparably fanatical and deeply respectful. At this moment, Zhou Zhou suddenly discovered something from the corpse and shook his head with a smile. I see. There's actually a will technique similar to resurrection. No wonder you dare to court death in my hands. Resurrection and rebirth were actually very common at the god spirit level. Most gods who had plans and were afraid of death would master or yearn to master the means of resurrection. However, once one reached the supreme will realm, all the god spirits' bodies would be condensed into will origin cores. Under such circumstances, it was very difficult for a supreme will realm expert to have the means to revive. This was because once the will origin nucleus was destroyed, it was very difficult to revive. Freeaudible.com. This basically cut off most methods of resurrection and rebirth. Of course, there were also some shockingly talented supreme willpower experts who could develop willpower skills that could revive and resurrect. However, this kind of will technique was usually extremely rare. Once it appeared, it would cause countless supreme will realm experts and even will transcendence experts to fight for it. Zhou 11 did not expect him to be the first to encounter a top supreme will realm expert who had mastered such a technique. He thought that he would be able to obtain a top supreme will realm expert as his subordinate. Unexpectedly, he could run away even though he had already obtained it. He sighed in pity. If his myriad method star palm or all the land in the world belongs to the king's 2 law skills transformed into willpower skills, he would be extremely confident that even if the other party had such a method of resurrection and rebirth, he would definitely not be able to escape his palm. However, his myriad method star palm and all the land in the world belongs to the king were both quasi-supreme will realm techniques at the moment. They could not reach the standards of will techniques at all. He could unleash the power of a quasi-will transcendent on the basis of his strength at the high-level supreme will realm and other aspects. However, it was only the might. As for the other nomological abilities that sealed fate, instant death, and even waiting to eliminate evil, the myriad method star palm could not be used at the moment. It's fine. Let's run. Cutting off one of his bodies and making him lose a chance of resurrection is already enough to make him suffer heavy losses. Zhou 11 did not mind. There seemed to be an exceptionally large number of Supreme Will Realm experts in the land of Tianjun's corpse. There was no lack of a top Supreme Will Realm expert like him. Alright, it was still lacking, but there was still a long way to go. Zhou 11 was not in a hurry. At that thought, Zhou 11 suddenly thought of a problem. He summoned the will of space-time and asked him, "Why are there so many Supreme Will Realm experts in the land of Tianjun's corpse? Could they all be here for that will inheritance?" After he had been enhanced by the Supreme Providence, the total number of willpower inheritances in his hands had almost reached 10. Chapter 1855, Massive Amount of Loots. 2. The current him had the mentality of not eating minced meat, so he asked this question. Of course, it was also because there were indeed too many Supreme Will Realm experts in the land of this heavenly Jun's corpse. Previously, he had thought that there were only 2 Supreme Will Realm specialists in the deepest depths of this heavenly Jun's corpse. However, as soon as he entered, he realized. How could there only be 2? That's a lot, isn't it? In less than half a day, he had already captured 4 to 5 Supreme Will Realm experts. Even though the will inheritance was precious, it could not attract so many Supreme Will Realm experts, right? Even a top Supreme Will Realm expert had come. Normally speaking, such an expert would have 1 or 2 incomplete or complete transcendent level inheritances. Why did he specially come over to fight with so many Supreme Will Realm experts? Aren't you afraid that ants will bite an elephant to death? A top Supreme Will Realm expert was not a willpower expert. There was still a possibility of many ants biting an elephant to death. When the will of space and time heard Zhou 11's question, it said without hesitation. That's right. I came for this will inheritance. Many Supreme Will Realm experts have the same goal as me. They want to find a will inheritance to learn from. However, he seemed to have thought of something as he hesitated for a moment and said, however, I heard that 2 days ago, 2 willpower experts also came. A strong willpower user? Are you sure? Zhou 11's expression suddenly turned serious. I've only heard of it. As for whether it's true, I've never verified it. The will of space-time said awkwardly. Zhou 11's expression was slightly serious. If all the willpower experts were here, then it was absolutely impossible for the place where Tianjun's corpse was to only have the willpower inheritance. Experts with strong willpower would not care about inheritances of the same level after all. This was because legacies of the same level were of little help to them. Therefore, they would not come all the way here to compete with a group of Supreme Will Realm experts for an inheritance of the same level. It would be very embarrassing if word got out. An answer naturally appeared in his mind. Eternal Immortal Realm. Something at the Eternal Immortal Realm had probably appeared in the place where Tianjun's corpse was. That was why experts with transcendent wills had rushed over from billions of light years away. There were treasures, inheritances, immortal weapons, or information about other eternal immortal realms. Only something of this level could make these top elites of the ultimate void great cosmos come personally. He and Zhou Shire looked at each other and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. Looks like I have to be more careful from now on. Zhou 11 said. Be careful. If you encounter danger, retreat immediately. Zhou 12 nodded. Even though the two god spirits were Zhou Zhou's clones, they did not want to die so easily. Following that, they continued forward. However, before they reached their next destination, they actually encountered a Supreme Will Realm expert. Moreover, he was a Supreme Will Realm expert with top-notch strength. This time, in order to prevent the other party from escaping, Zhou 11 personally made a move and soon severely injured the other party and detained him in front of him. Are you willing to surrender to this emperor and become a Supreme Will Realm cultivator under this emperor? This emperor won't give you any less benefits. Even if it's a transcendent level inheritance, this emperor can give it to you directly. Zhou 11 explained patiently. In order to pull this top Supreme Will Realm expert under his command, he had used all his methods. However, not only did this top-notch Supreme Will Realm expert not appreciate his kindness, he even cursed at Zhou 11. A mere quasi-Supreme Will Realm cultivator wants me to join you by relying on the Will Transcendence secret technique? Dream on. When I recover my strength, I'll be the first to use your head as a side dish. Zhou 11 casually crushed the other party's head again before the other party could finish speaking. This time, the other party was really dead. There was no way to revive him. Zhou 11 shook his head. Was it difficult to submit to him? He didn't even care about his life? Oh, he had forgotten that an existence that had already become a Supreme Will Realm expert had a will that was as tough as iron. It was probably harder than a mortal ascending to the heavens to make things difficult for the other party. As for the will of time and space, they probably felt that it was never embarrassing to submit to the strong within their will. That was why they could accept his coercion and become his subordinates. He did not mind. He stretched out his right hand and aimed at the corpse of this top Supreme Will Realm expert. He activated Supreme Luck. After activating the super explosion, the number of loots was 50 times. Splash! A large number of loots instantly appeared in Zhou 11's first treasure vault. Zhou 11 only took a glance and a smile appeared on his face. Needless to say, the spoils of war of the Supreme Gods and below could be described as vast. There were actually more than 2 million Supreme Will Realm spoils of war. This included Will Holy Artifacts, Supreme Will Realm Treasures, Supreme Will Realm Divine Medicines, Supreme Will Realm Building Blueprints, Supreme Will Realm Books, Supreme Will Realm Inheritances. As for the Willpower Treasure, there were more than 3,000 of them here. With just my supreme luck, it's definitely impossible for so many transcendent level treasures to drop. The reason why so many transcendent level treasures could be dropped is probably because this guy already has some transcendent level treasures on him. Zhou 11 lamented. He was also very happy. He had made a killing this time. The Lord Talent of Supreme Luck was very useful in collecting treasures. Thereafter, they did not stay for long and continued to search for other Supreme Willpower experts. They also eliminated the Chaos Demons they encountered on the way and collected Chaos Divine Treasures. The Eternal Continent. Zhou Fight led the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's army, which had rested for the entire night, and once again set foot on this mainland. With a thought, 2 maps appeared in front of him. This map was the map of the Eternal Continent and the long river of time and space that the Heavenly Map Army had drawn after inspecting the entire Eternal Continent and the river of time and space. Zhou Fight's gaze landed on the map of the Eternal Continent. After an entire day of battle yesterday, they had already conquered 1/20th of the entire Eternal Continent. In this 1/20th area, all the historical prodigies summoned by the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had been eliminated. As for the other local historical life forms, as long as they did not provoke his Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom army, Zhou Fight could not be bothered with them. If he dared to recklessly provoke them, he would let them know what cruelty was. After he looked at the map of the Eternal Continent for a while, he used the power of his will to draw about 1/5 of the area above. Today, our goal is to take down 1/5 of this area. Zhou Fight said in a deep voice. If it was yesterday, he definitely wouldn't dare set such a huge goal. This was because he did not have many Supreme Will Realm experts under him. And if he dared to take action personally, he always had a premonition that as long as he dared to reveal strength that exceeded the Supreme Will Realm, the 3 historical geniuses of the Eternal Continent would also take action against him. For the time being, he didn't want to fight a historical hero with a transcendent will. Therefore, other than the first time he attacked yesterday, he didn't do anything for the rest of the time. Instead, he let the Heavenly Blade Will and other Supreme Will Realm experts under he fight for him. This was the reason why he had eliminated 1/10 of the historical prodigies in the Eternal Continent in an entire day. It was different now. Even though he was still unable to make a move today, he had brought 7 Supreme Gods with him today. These 7 Supreme Will Realm experts were all Supreme Will Realm experts who had just advanced today. While they had just been promoted, with the enhancement of a top-notch legacy and a full set of Will Holy artifacts, their combat power were not inferior to historical heroes of the same level. Since they had such strength, Zhou Fight brought them here. While letting them become his hired thugs, he also wanted them to experience the strength of a true prodigy. This was to prevent them from getting carried away because they had just advanced. Zhou Zhou would also make a move if he encountered an opponent that he really could not deal with. As long as he did not use the battle power of the Will Transcendence Realm, it would not be a problem. Let's begin. Zhou Zhou ordered calmly. Yes. The soldiers shouted, following which they boarded the supreme level ship and flew towards their destination. Chapter 1856, Tianyang Huazhu and the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth Pill. 1. The battle soon began. The myriad worlds chaos pool. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord and God King Heaven Punishment were standing here, looking at Zhou Fight and the soldiers who were leading the soldiers to conquer the eternal mainland. Our third brother's strength has increased again. Such power can already be called quasi-intentional transcendence. It's hard to imagine that he isn't even a true Supreme Will Realm expert now. The God King Heaven Punishment lamented. Unbelievable. The Supreme Will's judgment has never been bad. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord also smiled and nodded. Second brother. The God King Heaven Punishment looked at the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord and said with a smile, you have to change your lazy personality. If you don't work hard, you will probably be caught up by third brother. At that time, your position as the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord might really be snatched away by third brother. So be it. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord said nonchalantly, I don't care about the Supreme Lord reserve army position to begin with. You really don't care? The God King Heaven Punishment said with a faint smile, then why are you guarding this myriad worlds chaos pool every day? I remember that you used to roam the ultimate void great cosmos when you had nothing to do. You would look for the legendary Sea of Void while you roamed around. However, ever since you became a Supreme Lord Reserve Army, you have never gone out to search for the Sea of Void. You don't even have the habit of playing anymore. I like to guard my myriad worlds chaos pool and fish. Can't I? The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord smiled. Alright, alright. The God King Heaven Punishment stopped teasing him. He turned his head and looked in the direction of Zhou Fight. It was as though he had seen through space as he looked in the direction of Blazing Sun Divine Capital. It's not a big deal to increase his strength. What's terrifying is that he can actually nurture 7 Supreme Lord Reserve armies in one go. Our third brother is really unbelievable. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord instructed. Third brother is a natural-born lord. One of the methods a lord is best at is nurturing subordinates. He has not deviated from his lord path at all. Instead, it has become more profound. This is also the reason why the subordinates he nurtured became stronger and more stable. Unlike Big Brother and me. One is purely pursuing strength, while the other is purely pursuing hobbies. They have already given up on the path of a lord. The God King Heaven Punishment nodded silently. Not everyone could raise their strength while taking care of the development of the territory. If a lord wanted to increase his strength, it was countless times slower than ordinary life forms. Back then, before he rose to prominence, he already felt that the lord's status and responsibilities were a burden to him, who pursued strength wholeheartedly. Therefore, when he became the Supreme Lord's Reserve Army, he immediately contacted the Supreme Will. While retaining the Lord's innate ability for him, he sold his lord faction directly to other factions in exchange for cultivation resources. The Supreme Will only advised God King Heaven Punishment a little. He stopped persuading him, seeing that he was determined. Then, he helped the entire time, allowing him to become an independent cultivator. In fact, the God King Heaven Punishment's choice did not seem to be wrong. After he broke away from his status as a lord, he quickly became the fastest peerless genius to advance to the Supreme Will realm in the current Supreme Great Cosmos. He even firmly occupied the Supreme Lord Reserve Army for countless years and firmly suppressed the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord who wanted to climb up, not giving the other party a chance to surpass him. In the eyes of many experts, God King Heaven Punishment was the best successor to the Supreme Lord. Later on, the Supreme Will chose the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord as the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord. Only then did the experts realize that the Supreme Will's test on God King Heaven Punishment might have to be prolonged for a period of time. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, who was not much inferior to God King Heaven Punishment, was sent by the Supreme Will to compete on the same stage. Whoever was more outstanding would be able to inherit the position of Supreme Lord and get rid of the ugly label of being a reserve army. In the end, he did not expect Spring Autumn Dharma Lord to be the same as God King Heaven Punishment. They were not interested in the path of a lord. Not long after he became a Supreme Lord Reserve Army, he gave up his status as a lord. Not long after, the third Supreme Lord Reserve Army Lord of 10,000 Evils appeared. This Lord of 10,000 Evils had always insisted on the path of a lord. However, even Supreme Will Realm experts could tell that even though the Lord of 10,000 Evils was outstanding, he was still far inferior to God King Heaven Punishment and Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. He was useless even if he was given a chance. Therefore, the dissatisfied Supreme Will held the Lord of all Races contest not long after and selected Zhou Zhou as the last Supreme Lord Reserve. At this point, the 4 reserve forces were complete. Fruboval.cm. For the time being, the Supreme Will did not have any thoughts or actions of showing signs of reserve army again. Now, anyone with a discerning eye could see that with the news of the Common People's Regal series of deeds, everyone thought that the potential of the Common People's Regal on the path of a lord was very high. It could be seen from his efficiency in nurturing Supreme Will Realm experts. Then, the God King Heaven Punishment and Spring Autumn Dharma Lord chatted for a while before God King Heaven Punishment prepared to leave. "I'll leave first. The pressure on the Dusk battlefield has increased tremendously recently. The Illusionist clan is sending more and more experts to attack us. I can't stay here for too long," the God King Heaven Punishment said. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord nodded, then he thought of something and asked, "Then are you still coming tonight? You're talking about Third Brother's welcome feast, right? Of course I'll come. However, I shouldn't stay long." Chapter 1857, Tianyang Wazhu and the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth Pill. 2. The God King Heaven Punishment nodded silently. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord nodded. Then, the God King Heaven Punishment left. After the God King Heaven Punishment left, the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord looked at Zhou fight for a while and sighed at their high offensive efficiency before returning to the Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool to continue fishing. "Damn pool, give me something good. I'm about to be surpassed by my younger brother." The God King Heaven Punishment gritted his teeth. Actually, he still cared about Zhou Zhou's improvement. At night, in the Blazing Sun Divine Capital, inside Blazing Sun Shrine, Zhou Zhou was sitting on the throne, and below him was Tianyang Wazhu, who had a respectful smile on his face. This was Regal Great Solar's 5th child. Back then, Zhou XI's clone, Zhou Fight, had once been in the Yellow River region. In order to fight for the inheritance of the Yellow River's will, he had gotten to know the 5th prince, Tianyang Wazhu, and made a deal. Now that Tianyang Wazhu had suddenly come, if nothing went wrong, he should have come for the deal. As expected, Tianyang Wazhu said, "Your Highness Regal, it's been a long time since we last met. Your Highness is even more elegant than before." Tianyang Wazhu carefully stole a glance at Zhou Zhou on the divine throne, then quickly retracted his gaze, feeling very emotional. Back in the Yellow River region, this Common People's Regal had already revealed the method to instantly kill a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert. He had thought that the other party's strength would not increase in a short period of time and that he would not be able to cause too much trouble. Unexpectedly, he later learned from his father, the Regal Great Solar, that not only had this Common People's Regal's strength reached the quasi-Supreme Will Realm, his combat strength had also increased even more terrifyingly. He had already reached the quasi-Will Realm. Tianyang Wazhu was dumbfounded. He racked his brains but could not figure out why Common People's Regal, who was born in the human race, had already reached a level that he had to look up to so quickly. That was the combat power of a quasi-will transcendent. As Regal Great Solar's child, he naturally knew the value of such combat strength. It could be said that, at this moment, the common people's Regal already had the combat strength of the top 10 in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. And his true realm was only at the quasi-supreme will realm. Just thinking about it made him feel like he was off the mark. He was both in awe of Zhou Zhou's potential and pleasantly surprised that he had befriended him. Now that he thought about it, he had lowered himself to befriend the other party back then. It was simply the most important move in his life. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be qualified to stand in front of him. He could now become a celebrity in the eyes of many Supreme Will Realm experts at a gathering at the Supreme Will Realm. Why would he come to see him personally if he didn't have such a past relationship with the common people's Regal? It was probably only when his father came personally that common people's Regal would be able to receive him personally. It would be good enough if common people's Regal's clone could come and meet the other Supreme Willpower Realm experts. You're not bad yourself. Zhou Zhou smiled and looked at Tianyang Wazua below. This emperor can feel that you're in a good mood. Even your cultivation has increased a lot. I have indeed comprehended something on the Dao of Will. I already roughly understand how to walk down the will realm of the Supreme Will Realm in the future. Tianyang Wazua said humbly. However, everyone could see the smug look on his face. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. With Tianyang Wazua's current age, he could indeed be called a genius for being able to comprehend the will realm of the Supreme Will Realm. However, that was all. It would not be easy for him to continue advancing. Not only did he have to completely raise his will realm to the Supreme Will Realm, he also had to comprehend his will technique. In the end, he had to combine the two to form a will body and completely become a Supreme Will Realm expert. In Zhou Zhou's opinion, if Tianyang Wazua did not have accumulated for 100,000 or even a million years, he would probably not be able to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. However, he didn't plan on interfering. The other party was not his subject, nor his relative. He was just a little kid who had met his clone. He couldn't be bothered. At this moment, Tianyang Wazua held up an ancient pillbox respectfully with both hands and said respectfully, Your Majesty. We previously discussed that His Majesty would provide resources and we would provide alchemists and pill refinement techniques to refine the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill together. His Majesty's resources have all been refined. Due to the high quality of the divine medicine, a total of 213 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pills have been refined. Your Majesty, please take a look. Zhou Zhou looked at the box. With a thought, he saw the pill box open by itself without any wind. Then, divine pills that emitted the aura of heaven and earth flew out and lined up in the sky above the shrine. It was the 213 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pills. Not one more, not one less. Not bad. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly, feeling very satisfied. One 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill could give life forms below the Supreme God level 10 extra lives. In terms of cost value alone, it was even comparable to a Supreme Will Realm holy medicine. If not for the fact that it could only be effective against Supreme Gods and not experts above the Supreme Will Realm, it would have long been a genuine Supreme Will Realm holy medicine. He saw 22 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pills fly in front of Tianyang Wazua with a thought. Tianyang Wazua opened his mouth, but in the end, he accepted it with a bitter smile. According to the instructions he received from his father before he came, he had prepared not a single one of the 213 9 holy heaven and earth pills and gave them all to Zhou Zhou. Of course. They weren't doing charity either. Regal Great Solar meant that he would hand all the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pills to Zhou Zhou this time. Then, he would use this opportunity to establish a long-term cooperation with Zhou Zhou and strive to refine more 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pills. However, the Regal Great Solar had also specially reminded him that if Zhou Zhou wasn't willing to be distributed like this, he didn't need to force him. He just had to follow the other party's wishes. Fruinovel.com. Tianyang Wazua sighed inwardly before attempting to say to Zhou Zhou. Your Majesty, this batch of 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pills has been successfully traded. Does Your Majesty intend to continue this transaction with us? No problem. Zhou Zhou smiled and said, It's been a pleasure working with you guys. Of course, it's not a problem to continue trading. Tianyang Wazua was delighted. It seemed that His Majesty intended to maintain a friendly relationship with their son Divine Court. Then it would be easier for him to report back this time. I wonder how many 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pills His Majesty wants to refine this time. Tianyang Huazu asked. Upon hearing this, Zhou Zhou flipped his right hand, and a world ring appeared on his hand. He threw the ring towards Tianyang Huazu. After landing in Tianyang Huazu's hands, he said, "There are about 10,000 sets of refinement materials for the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill here. Take it and refine it all. However, there are a lot of them after all, so this emperor advises you to use your Sun Divine Court's connections to find a few more alchemists who can refine the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill. This way, you can refine it earlier. This emperor will give you 10 days. Can you refine these 10,000 sets of 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pills?" Zhou Zhou asked with a smile. Tianyang Huazu gulped. He looked at the world rings in his hand and was dumbfounded. 10,000 sets of materials for refining the 9 sacred heaven and earth pill? Didn't that mean that there were more than 1,000,000 supreme will realm divine herbs in this world ring alone? Oh my god! Tianyang Huazu felt that his hands were trembling. Was this something he could take? I'm only at the quasi-supreme will realm. How can I hold such a world ring that contains a huge amount of valuable medicinal herbs? Perhaps other supreme will realm experts had to be careful when facing the value of this world ring, right? Then, he recalled the request that the other party had mentioned. Refining 10,009 Saint Heaven and Earth pills in 10 days? Are you joking? Even if he called all the alchemists in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos who could refine the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill, they would probably not be able to refine 10,009 Saint Heaven and Earth pills, right? Not to mention 10,000, even 1,000 was difficult. Even though the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth pill was a supreme god-level medicinal pill, the difficulty of refining it was not inferior to refining a sacred medicine at the Supreme Will realm. Aren't you making things difficult for me? Tianyang Huazu was about to cry. Promise him. At this moment, Regal Great Solar's voice sounded in his ear. Chapter 1858, Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill. A goddess delivering herself. 1. Tianyang Huazu was stunned when he heard this voice. Father actually agreed? Why did father agree? Didn't he know how difficult it was? This question flashed through his mind. Then, he stopped thinking about it. Why did he care so much? There was a high chance that there was a way since his father had decided to agree. As for what method it was, he did not care. In any case, he was just a messenger. Don't worry, Your Majesty. The Sun Divine Court behind me is confident in refining these 10,009 Saint Heaven and Earth pills. Then this emperor is relieved. Zhou Zhou nodded and stopped talking. Tianyang Huazu understood the cue and took his leave. After leaving the Blazing Sun Shrine, he couldn't help but look at the majestic and magnificent Blazing Sun Shrine behind him and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. How long has it been? How can he grow so quickly? He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Then, his body instantly vanished from the spot. In Blazing Sun Shrine, on the throne, Zhou Zhou played with the box in his hand, smiled, and threw it into the Military Merit Exchange Treasure Vault. He could naturally tell that Regal Great Solar had instructed Tianyang Huazu to agree. However, he wasn't repulsed by it. He was even very willing to accept it. This was because this represented the active and friendly approach of this top expert of the Supreme Great Cosmos. Zhou Zhou didn't have a bad impression of Regal Great Solar, so he naturally wouldn't reject his approach. It won't be long before the Regal Great Lunar comes, right? Zhou Zhou thought to himself. Just as he had this thought, a guard walked into the shrine and said respectfully to Zhou Zhou on the throne. Reporting to Your Majesty. A god spirit from the Great Lunar Court has come to visit. Invite him in. Zhou Zhou chuckled. Speak of the devil. A goddess walked in with a master god tier attendant from the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up the moment he saw the other party. The moonlight seemed to be bowing down to her. The 12 lunar chakrams merged into a special outfit that flowed from her waist to the hem of her dress, forming a galaxy. As she walked, fine starlight appeared in the folds, as if it was dragging the entire galaxy. The cold moonstone was tempered by the star sea mystic sand. As she walked, cold fog drifted out and condensed into the phantom of a laurel behind her. She raised her hand and caressed the moon eclipse waist accessory on her waist. The buckles carved from the eternal cold marrow collided, producing an ethereal and clear sound. 3 drops of Regal Great Lunar's blood essence were sealed in the ice soul pendant hanging at the end of the necklace. At this moment, it was flowing with a dark light that made the stars lose their color. The most breathtaking thing was the full moon mark on her forehead. The 9-petaled crescent moon flickered with each breath. Each petal was sealed with a different form of the crescent moon illusion. When the third moon lit up, the nomological runes on the cloth awakened one after another, transforming into thousands of swimming silver divine carps that surrounded her. What a beautiful god spirit! Zhou Zhou nodded to himself. Such beauty was already top-notch in the myriad worlds. Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess greets the common people's regal. A cold and pleasant voice sounded, but there was a hint of gentleness in it. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess said respectfully. Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess? Could she be the third princess of the regal Great Lunar? The one famous for her moon eclipse divine power. I've often heard that the Great Lunar Court often produces beauties who are respected by all the worlds. She's indeed extraordinary now that I have seen her today. Zhou Zhou chuckled. Even though the other party was beautiful, she was not as beautiful as Zhou Zhou, so her tone was very polite and did not have any intention of getting close. Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess said with a calm expression. May I know why the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess is here? Zhou Zhou asked. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess came this time to represent the Great Lunar Court. To be precise, I want to sign a transaction contract with Your Majesty on behalf of my mother, the regal Great Lunar. Oh? What kind of deal is it? Zhou Zhou had expected this and asked without changing his expression. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess didn't say anything. She flipped her right hand and saw a Jade Soul Divine Pill emitting a cold moon glow appear in her hand. If an ordinary life form approached, even if they could only smell a trace of its aura, they would probably obtain the comprehension ability of a god spirit. Your Majesty, please take a look. This is the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill. It's a Supreme Will Realm medicinal pill. This Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill has no other effects. The only effect is that it can greatly increase one's comprehension of willpower in a short period of time. If you consume it too many times, it can permanently increase the god spirit's comprehension of willpower. Other than that, if a supreme god is about to advance to the Supreme Will Realm, this Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill can greatly increase the comprehension ability of a supreme god when comprehending a will technique, indirectly increasing the probability of advancing to the Supreme Will Realm by 20%. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess had a solemn expression. She looked at the divine pill floating in front of her. She couldn't help but have a burning look in her eyes even with her cold and aloof personality. This was a divine pill that could help a supreme god increase the probability of advancing to the Supreme Will Realm by 20%. Even in the ultimate void great cosmos, this Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill could be considered a top-notch divine pill. It could allow countless Supreme Will Realm experts and even willpower experts to chase after it. As for the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess, she was currently Grade 4 Supreme God. If this divine pill was given to her, she would be able to advance to the quasi-Supreme Will Realm in 10 years. Then, she would properly polish her will and advance it to the Supreme Will Realm. Once the two were combined, she could also become a Supreme Will Realm expert. As a goddess who also yearned for strength, the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess's Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill was extremely tempting to her. Chapter 1859, Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill. A goddess delivering herself. 2. However, she didn't dare have any improper thoughts. She knew that the Lunar Jade Soul Pill and the other items were personally handed over to her by her queen, the regal Great Lunar. She had to hand it over to the common people's regal. It had nothing to do with her. In fact, even her. Thinking of something, a faint blush appeared on the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess's fair face before disappearing in an instant. At the same time, Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. He looked at the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill in the other party's hand. He never expected the effects of the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill to be so shocking. It could actually increase the probability of a supreme god advancing to the Supreme Will Realm by 20%. This probability was already extremely shocking. As expected of a divine pill at the Supreme Will Realm, Zhou Zhou did not speak. Instead, he continued to look at the other party, waiting for him to state the terms of the deal. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess looked at Zhou Zhou without saying a word. She pursed her lips and said, His Majesty, the regal Great Lunar, ordered me to bring the formula for the Lunar Jade Soul Pill and this Lunar Jade Soul Pill to Your Majesty. As for how to trade, His Majesty regal Great Lunar said that the refinement of this Lunar Jade Soul Pill involves many Supreme Will Realm treasures. Only the most important medicinal catalyst, the Lunar Jade Soul Sacred Crystal, comes from the Supreme Star, the Great Lunar Star. After His Majesty, the common people's regal, obtains the pill formula for the Lunar Jade Soul Pill. If you want to refine such a pill, you only need to use a suitable Saint Crystal of the Will or a middle-rank Supreme Will Realm treasure of equivalent value to trade a Lunar Jade Soul Saint Crystal with our Great Lunar Court. As for the other treasures used to refine the Lunar Jade Soul Sacred Crystal, the Great Lunar Court actually doesn't have many raw materials. This requires His Majesty to send subordinates to the ultimate void Great Cosmos to collect them. Actually, it's precisely because the raw materials for this Lunar Jade Soul Pill are too difficult to collect that even our Great Lunar Court doesn't have many of them. The Lunar Jade Soul Pill in my hand is also a top-notch treasure in our Great Lunar Court. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess said so much because she wanted to prove how precious the Lunar Jade Soul Pill was. Furthermore, the Great Lunar Court, which had the formula for the Lunar Jade Soul Pill and held great aim. Zhou Zhou happily accepted this. Who would reject something that came to them for free after all? Can you show this Emperor the pill formula? Zhou Zhou asked. This was originally prepared for your Majesty anyway. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess smiled. Then, she took out the pill formula and sent it to Zhou Zhou with the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill. Zhou Zhou looked at the pill formula in front of him. The information carrier of this pill formula was a stone that emitted cold moonlight. Just this stone alone was a Supreme Will Realm treasure. Zhou Zhou received it with an unchanged expression. Then, he sent his willpower into it to check the information of the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill. After reading it, Zhou Zhou nodded inwardly. The pill formula should be correct. However, it was indeed as the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess had said. Most of the refinement materials in this pill formula were materials that the Supreme Great Cosmos did not produce. Only in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos could these materials be found. Zhou Zhou smiled inwardly. Fortunately, he had sent his clone to set up a trap in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. Not to mention anything else. Just the Yellow Heaven Great Cosmos that Zhou 16 was in was enough to gather all the ingredients for this prescription other than the Great Lunar Jade Soul Sacred Crystal. The Yellow Sky Great Cosmos Willpower Transcendent Class Elites combined were not as strong as the Supreme Willpower. However, their abundance of resources was ranked in the top 100 in the entire Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. As for the only Lunar Jade Soul Sacred Crystal, he could trade with the Great Lunar Court just as the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess had said. A mid-level Supreme Will Realm treasure was only exchanged for a Great Lunar Jade Soul Sacred Crystal. To Zhou Zhou, it was not a huge price to pay. The Will Transcendence treasures in his hands were all counted in thousands. He had long stopped caring about the transaction of Supreme Will Realm treasures. He could not even be bothered to bargain. He directly smiled at the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess and said, "Sacred Princess, please return to inform the Regal Great Lunar that this Emperor has agreed to carry out a transaction with the Great Lunar Court regarding the Lunar Jade Soul Sacred Crystal. Your Majesty is wise." The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess was delighted and hurriedly said. Zhou Zhou stopped talking. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess pursed her lips, looking like she wanted to say something but hesitated. Zhou Zhou could not help but find it strange. "Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess, do you have anything else to say?" He took the initiative to ask. "Your Majesty." The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess hesitated again and again before saying, "Actually, His Majesty the Regal Great Lunar also intends to send me to His Majesty." These words were already extremely straightforward. Even the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess could not help but blush again after saying this. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up when he heard that. He smiled and said, "Really? Why is Her Majesty Regal Great Lunar so generous? She actually sent her precious daughter over. Your Majesty is the greatest hero of the world. Regal Great Lunar also admires Your Majesty very much, so she deliberately gave me to Your Majesty." She blushed. "I see. His Majesty Regal Great Lunar really thinks too highly of this Emperor. This Emperor can't help but praise him," Zhou Zhou said with a smile. Then, he pondered and said, "In that case." The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess became nervous. Has the time to decide her fate arrived? What position would the common people's regal arrange for her? Concubine? Imperial concubine? Or a god empress? She could not help but look forward to it while being nervous. Was this common people's regal the most popular rookie and expert in the Supreme Great Cosmos? According to the Queen, even though this common people's regal was at the quasi-supreme will realm like her, he already had the combat strength of a quasi-will transcendent. This was something that God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had not done back then. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that common people's regal was the #1 prodigy in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. Even in the entire Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, Common People's Regal could be said to be the #1 prodigy. Even though I came from the Great Lunar Court and am the daughter that the Regal Great Lunar values the most, if I can marry this overwhelming prodigy, it might be my honor. The moon eclipse sacred princess began to fantasize about her future life. Then, she heard Zhou Zhou begin. Moon eclipse sacred princess, you're a quasi-supreme will realm expert. There aren't many such experts in this Emperor's blazing sun divine kingdom. There are only 500 to 600 of them. In that case, this Emperor will send you to the Blazing Sun Army to assume the position of Deputy Commander. What do you think? I'll listen. To what? The moon eclipse sacred princess was just about to obey when she suddenly realized what she had heard. She was instantly stunned. The Common People's Regal wanted to send her to the Blazing Sun Army? Shouldn't I be his partner? How did I become the other his fighter in the blink of an eye? Did this Common People's Regal misunderstand something? I'm here to be his woman, not to be his subordinate. She heard the Queen Mother's voice in her heart just as she was about to say something. Agree to it. Queen Mother, he has misunderstood. He wants me to join the army. The moon eclipse sacred princess was anxious. Sigh, it's not bad to be the deputy commander of the Blazing Sun Army. The Blazing Sun Army is the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's #1 main battle army. 30% of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's high-end cultivation resources are gathered in the Blazing Sun Army. Among them, the positions of deputy commanders are held by the trusted aid of the Common People's Regal. Even if those supreme will realm experts are here, they have to work hard to be promoted to deputy commander. It's probably because of me and the Great Lunar Court that the Common People's Regal was able to ascend to this position without going through this route. Be content. Make good use of your duties and authority as deputy commander. You should be able to accumulate a large number of contribution points very soon. At that time, you might be able to exchange for 1 or 2 resources that can help you advance to the Supreme Will Realm from the contribution exchange system of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Queen Mother, I have a feeling that the opportunity for you to advance to the Supreme Will Realm might fall on the Blazing Sun Army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Chapter 1860, War Summary 1. Mother, is what you said true? The moon eclipse sacred princess was originally depressed, but when she heard this, she immediately became pleasantly surprised. She had an extremely strong personality, especially when it came to worshipping the strong. Promoting from the quasi-supreme will realm to the supreme will realm was her greatest wish in life. She could really use the resources in the Blazing Sun Army to advance to the supreme will realm if she were to join it. Then she wouldn't be at a loss. Wasn't she just a fighter? The moon eclipse sacred princess felt that she could do it again. The most suitable scene for her moon eclipse divine power was battle. She was confident that she could quickly establish a large number of military merits with her abilities and obtain the resources and legacies she wanted to help her advance. Except, he glanced at the Common People's Regal on the throne and couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The Great Lunar Court. In Moon Firmament Shrine. Regal Great Lunar sat alone on the throne and looked at the mirror formed by the moonlight in front of her. The mirror displayed the scene of the moon eclipse sacred princess meeting the Common People's Regal. She could sense that Common People's Regal had already sensed her prying. However, since the Common People's Regal didn't show any signs of disgust, she continued watching. When she saw the moon eclipse sacred princess's dejected expression, she couldn't help but shake her head. Silly child! Do you really think that the Common People's Regal didn't see though our intentions? He was feigning ignorance. Thinking of this, she could not help but sigh softly. The mortal woman named Leah was lucky enough to marry such a good man. In comparison, it was as if even my daughter was inferior to Leah. On the other side, the Sun Divine Court. In the Blazing Sun Shrine. Ha 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 ha. The Regal Great Solar looked at the defeated moon eclipse sacred princess and felt extremely happy. I asked you to imitate my son and build a relationship with the Common People's Regal. Suffered a loss yet? Dumbfounded yet? You want to gift your daughter, but he doesn't want to talk to you at all. He just turned around and sent your daughter to the military camp. Even though this might not necessarily be a bad thing, and even to the moon eclipse sacred princess, it might be a good thing that would bring her great fortune. However, the Regal Great Solar felt happy. At the same time, he added an interesting label to the Common People's Regal. This junior is quite interesting. Regal Great Solar chuckled. Then, he thought of what Regal Great Lunar had given to Common People's Regal and shook his head slightly. The Regal Great Lunar is still too stingy. Even though the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill was a Supreme Will Realm medicinal pill, its effect was also very good. Comparing the two, on the surface, the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill seemed to be of a higher grade than the 9 Sacred Heaven and Earth Pill, but the ingredients for the 9 Saint Heaven and Earth Pill were easier to gather. It was also easier to refine. The effect was more direct and obvious. What about the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill? Other than the Great Lunar Jade Soul Holy Crystal that could be obtained directly from this universe, most of the other materials had to be collected from the ultimate void Great Cosmos. The difficulty of collecting them was huge. Even the Great Lunar Court would have to spend nearly 10,000 years to collect all the ingredients needed to refine the Lunar Jade Soul Pill. Moreover, they would have to pay a huge price. Not to mention the price. These 10,000 years were actually neither long nor short. It varies from person to person. However, to Zhou Zhou, who had only grown for more than 20 years, it was definitely a divine pill with extremely low cost effectiveness. Regal Great Lunar clearly knew about this, but he still handed the pill formula to Zhou Zhou. This behavior made Regal Great Solar have no choice but to think maliciously. Regal Great Lunar probably doesn't want to pay too much and wants to befriend common people's Regal. Compared to the recipe of the Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill, the real Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill was more realistic. Regal Great Solar smiled and shook his head. He didn't think too much about it and waved his hand to shatter the mirror in front of him. Since he had established a good relationship with the common people's Regal for the time being, he would leave it at that for now. He could take it slow if he wanted to deepen the connection later. There was no need to rush. Regal Great Solar continued to deal with his government affairs. Blazing Sun Shrine. Zhou Zhou looked at the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess's confused expression and secretly smiled. On the surface, he asked curiously. Is the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess dissatisfied with this Emperor's arrangements? No, no, no. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess came back to her senses and hurriedly said, I'm willing to go to the Blazing Sun Army and serve your majesty as the deputy commander. That's for the best. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. In that case, you can also join this Emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Sure. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess said without hesitation. Since she had taken on the position of deputy commander of the other party's main army, she naturally had to join the other party's country. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess was already prepared for this. Then, Zhou Zhou chatted with the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess for a while before letting her leave. The Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess received the order and immediately left the Blazing Sun Shrine for the Blazing Sun Army's encampment. Not long after the other party left, Zhou Zhou received the summary of today's battle. Zhou Zhou looked over. With the combined efforts of the 5 battlefields, Supreme Continent Battlefield, Ultimate Void Great Cosmos Battlefield, Tianjin's Corpse Battlefield, Crimson Great Cosmos Battlefield, and Eternal Continent Battlefield, the statistics were calculated. The Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had obtained about 50 mist cores of various levels, origin crystals, skill books, equipment, and basic materials today. 783 green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments from capital units. 100,000 units of Chaos Divine Treasure. 1,932,483,471 legendary tier and below Lord Talent spheres. Chapter 1861, War Summary. 2. A large number of Lord Talent crystal fragments of other levels. There were also. Chapter 412, Guy Unit 3498 Capital Units 917.2 trillion 172.3 trillion 80 million units of Divine Crystals from low-tier deity level to high-tier deity level. 521 trillion 298 billion 327 million 312,731 million True God tier Divine Crystals. 21,934,971,721 million Master God tier Divine Crystals. 11,123,472,381 Grade 1 to Grade 3 Supreme God Divine Crystals. 23,249 Supreme Saint Crystals. 1,283 capital units had 2,341,287,329,370,000 lesser gods to high-tier deity level divine artifacts. 831,123,470,000 true god tier divine artifacts. 32,743,247 master god tier divine artifacts. 23,183,471 Supreme God Divine Artifacts. 3,123 Holy Will Artifacts. 3 items that transcended Holy Artifacts. There were a total of 3,398 capital units with more than 2,378 trillion divine spark fragments, God-tier medicinal herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 7 capital units, 2,378 trillion 2,387,436,712,78 master God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 1,023,891,273 supreme God-level God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 332,387 supreme will realm God-tier medicinal herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 7,000 willpower grade God-tier medicinal herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. In terms of insight defection, Zhou Zhou's various clones had obtained a total of 512 Guy Unit 3,481 capital units soldiers, 1,234,137,471 God spirits, 312,923,782,371 true God tiers, 5,213,481 supremacy gods, 1,621 supreme gods, 1,011 quasi-supreme will realms, and 12 supreme will realms through the 2 insight defection techniques, Land of Earth, a Minister of the King, and Son of Destiny. In addition, the Lords of the Star Alliance had also insight defection, 1 Guy unit, 1,283 capital units soldiers, 812,312,370,000 God spirits, 99 million true God tiers, and 142,231 master gods. In the end, in terms of the advancement of God spirits, there were a total of 6,231,247,124,713,847,327 legendary tier advanced grade soldiers who had been promoted to low tier deity level elementary grade God spirits. There were also 312,323,712,371 million high tier deity level advanced grade God spirits who had advanced to true God tier elementary grade God spirits. Another 3,712,381 top-notch true gods of the human race and 18,232,378 top-notch true gods of the people of foreign races felt their master god tier bottleneck and applied to enter the reincarnation sacred palace to cultivate in seclusion in an attempt to break through to the master god tier realm. Moreover, 711 master god tier advanced grade god spirits, and God spirits had also sensed the bottleneck in their advancement and were preparing to enter the reincarnation sacred palace today to advance to grade 1 supreme God. In the end, there were still 15 quasi-supreme will realm experts who had already reached the limit of the will divine transformation realm. They were prepared to enter the reincarnation sacred palace tonight and advance to the low-level supreme will realm. Zhou Zhou's original military strength was 1,054 Guy Unit 3,597 capital units 8,238,328,147,812,293 soldiers, 4,026,473,312,242 God spirits, 360,858,959,605 true God tiers, 18,953,465 supremacy gods, 2,590 supreme gods, 606 quasi-supreme will realms, and 10 supreme will realm experts. Now, with the addition of these insight defection divine spirit powerhouses and the 5 supreme gods and 15 supremacy gods recruited from the chaotic mystic realm, the military strength under him had reached 1,567 Guy Unit 8,361 capital units 2,873 trillion 12,932,811 soldiers, 6,231 trillion 954,715,221 God spirits, 986,254,347 true God tiers, 24,309,177 supremacy gods, 4,211 supreme gods, 1,617 quasi-supreme will realms, and 22 supreme will realm powerhouses. A smile appeared on Zhou Zhou's face after reading it. His gaze landed on the number of supreme gods, quasi-supreme will realms, and supreme will realms. 4,211 supreme gods. 1,617 quasi-supreme will realm experts. 22 Supreme Will Realm Experts. These three numbers were extremely terrifying even in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. More than 4,000 Supreme Gods. In the entire Supreme Great Cosmos, there were only more than 10,000 Supreme Gods. The number of Supreme Gods under him was already half of the number of Supreme Gods in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. There was even less of a need to talk about quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts. He did not know how many quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts there were in the Supreme Great Cosmos. However, he could guess that even if all the quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos were added together, they would probably not be as many as the quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts under him. There were more than 1,600 quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts after all. Generally speaking, if a great cosmos wanted to have so many quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts, its Supreme God base number had to be at least 100,000. There were only more than 10,000 Supreme Gods in the tall universe, so it was naturally impossible for there to be so many quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts. As for the final Supreme Will Realm Expert, he now had a total of 22 under him. There was even no lack of top Supreme Will Realm Experts. The additional Supreme Will Realm Experts were naturally the experts that his clones, Zhou 11 and Zhou 12, had forcefully subdued in the land of Tianjun's corpse through martial strength. Other people's melons that were forcibly twisted would not be sweet. However, he had the Supreme Lord talent, the Holy King. Even if the other party was a forced melon, it was still sweet in Zhou Zhou's mouth. As long as one's strength increases, one can achieve the effect of incite defection just by relying on martial strength. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. What made he even happier were naturally the 15 Supreme Will Realm Experts who were about to advance tomorrow. Zhou Zhou opened the promotion list and took a look. He discovered that 2 of the quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts who were about to advance were from the Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court. One was from the God King Heaven Punishment and the other was from the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. As for the 5 Supreme Will Realm Experts brought by Lord of 10,000 Evils and this Divine Being, although they were showing signs of advancing, they could not advance today. The remaining 11 quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts were the soldiers under him. Perfect. After these 4 quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts advance to the Supreme Will Realm, I can be considered to have given Regal Great Solar an explanation. At the very least, I've proven to them that it was the right choice for them to hand over these Grade 3 and 4 and even quasi-Supreme Will Realm Experts to me. It also proves that my method of nurturing Supreme Will Realm Experts is truly unique. Tisk tisk. Regal Great Solar and them definitely didn't expect that on the second day of delivery, 4 Supreme Gods among them would advance to the Supreme Will Realm. Tisk, not to mention them, even I didn't expect it. Zhou Zhou smiled. This proved that these Supreme Gods sent by the other party indeed had the potential to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. He did not give some Supreme Gods who did not have the potential to advance to the Supreme Will Realm to him as a test. From this, it was enough to tell that these guys trusted him to nurture a Supreme Will Realm expert. He did not let down their trust. A freshly minted Supreme Willpower expert would appear in front of them tomorrow. He suddenly thought of something and muttered to himself. After the news of these new Supreme Will Realm experts spreads, the reputation of the Supreme Will Realm that I can nurture will definitely resound throughout the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. At that time, there might be even more Supreme Will Realm experts recommending the Supreme Gods of their faction to come to my place to cultivate. Even some Supreme Gods who don't belong to any faction might take the initiative to join my Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. We have to let Zhou manage, Zhang Yuankai, and them prepare for this. He did as he said. Zhou Zhou immediately told this conjecture to Zhou manage and Zhang Yuankai so that they could prepare for this matter. As a hands-off boss, he naturally wouldn't personally interfere. Then, he looked at the number of Chaos Divine treasures in his hands and realized that there were already 250,000 units. Then, he looked at Zhou 16's situation in the Yellow Sky Great Cosmos. Zhou 16's Holy Sun Divine Kingdom had conquered a total of 15 Master God Tier Beginner Grade Kingdoms and 8 Master God Tier Intermediate Grade Kingdoms today. Under Zhou Manage's arrangements today, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had established a total of 5 Beginner Grade Master God Tier Kingdoms in the High Continent and had them under its command. In the end, Zhou Zhou looked at Zhou 15's situation. Zhou 15 led the Succubus Divine Kingdom today and spent a lot of resources in the Crimson Great Cosmos to help his high-level Divine Kingdom Scarlet Lord faction establish 5 Master God Tier Beginner Grade Kingdoms and conquer the Beginner God Tier Kingdoms established by the 3 local high-level Divine Kingdom factions. Zhou Zhou was stunned when he saw this. He hurriedly opened the Territory Upgrade interface. As expected, he discovered that his territory could already be upgraded to a Grade 2 Supreme God territory. Chapter 1862, Upgrading Territory. Upgrading the Gate of Summoning. Increase in Lord Talent, 1. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. In the beginning, he thought that it would be very difficult to upgrade to a Grade 2 Supreme God territory. This was because one of its requirements was to conquer a total of 10 Master God tier intermediate grade kingdoms. These 10 Master God tier intermediate grade kingdoms naturally did not exist in the Supreme Great Cosmos. Fortunately, even though the Master God tier intermediate grade kingdom was considered a high-level faction in the Yellow Sky Great Cosmos, they could at least be found, and there were quite a number of them. Zhou 16 only went to the Yellow Heaven Great Cosmos for a few days before helping Zhou Zhou satisfy this criterion. Then, he opened the Divine Kingdom's advancement requirements. Conquer 20 Master God tier beginner grade kingdoms under the command of the Scarlet Lord, 11/20. Conquer 10 territories of the Master God tier beginner grade kingdoms not under the command of the Scarlet Lord, 13/10. Zhou Zhou shook his head when he saw these two conditions. It would be great if he could also complete the advancement requirements by conquering the Master God tier kingdoms of the outer universes. Then, he would be able to upgrade the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to a Grade 1 Supreme Kingdom. Forget it, let's take it slow. This is the condition after all. In the future, he had to increase the investment of resources in this aspect. Only then could his territory advance rapidly. He got up and instantly disappeared. In the next second, he had already appeared above Blazing Sun Divine Capital. He looked at his Divine Capital and had a thought. In the next second, accompanied by 4 ZI units of basic materials, 1000 Grade 2 Supreme God Divine Crystals, 5000 Capital Units Origin Crystals, 50,000 units of Chaos Divine Treasures, and 500 units of Ultimate Void Crystals, they instantly disappeared. A text notification appeared. Congratulations, your Grade 1 Supreme God Nation, Lord's Law, has successfully advanced to a Grade 2 Supreme God Nation, Lord's Law. Your territory has successfully advanced to Grade 1 Supreme Territory. Your Grade 1 Supreme God Astral Divine King Array has been upgraded to Grade 2 Supreme God Astral Divine King Array. Durability of Territory Stone Tablet increased to 5,000 capital units / 5,000 capital units. Your territory has expanded to 50 trillion km times 50 trillion km times 500 million km. All fog monsters within the territory of the new territory have been expelled. Scarlet fog will not appear in any of your territories. You have received an upgrade reward, Supreme Building Blueprint Treasure Chest, Grade 2 Supreme God. Lord Talent Notification, your Scarlet Broodmother can be upgraded. Lord Skill Hint, your Mysterious Caravan faction has increased. Lord Skill Notification, the strength of the clergy of your life arc has increased. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly, feeling very satisfied. He had finally advanced to a Grade 2 Supreme God territory. Even though he felt that the advancement conditions were a little difficult in the beginning, as Zhou 16 advanced into the Yellow Heaven Great Cosmos, these conditions suddenly became simpler. Then, he looked at the upgrade requirements. Construction upgrade, 10 Wood ZI unit, 10 Sand ZI unit, 10 Metal ZI unit, 10 Stone ZI unit, 1000 Grade 3 Supreme God Divine Crystals, 1 Gaia unit Origin Crystals, 100,000 Chaos Divine Treasures, 1000 Ultimate Void Crystals, 1000 Advanced Grade Kingdoms, 50 Master God Tier Intermediate Grade Kingdoms, 10 Grade 2 Supreme God Spirits, 5 billion Heroes. Zhou Zhou heaved a sigh of relief after reading it. These conditions were not difficult. The only thing that took more time was the requirement to conquer 50 Intermediate Grade Master God Tier Kingdoms. However, it only took time. The Yellow Sky Great Cosmos was extremely vast. It was quite easy to find and conquer 50 beginner grade Master God tier kingdoms. Zhou 16's side still needs to increase the number of troops so that he can speed up the conquest. The efficiency of establishing beginner grade Master God tier kingdoms in the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos has to be greatly increased. My current strength has already reached the Quasi-Will Transcendence level. But the territorial forces and countries are still at the Supreme God level or even the Master God tier level. It doesn't match my strength. Zhou Zhou shook his head helplessly. Then, he came to the Gate of Summoning and spent 40 ZI units of basic materials and 1000 Grade 2 Supreme God Crystals to upgrade the Gate of Summoning to the highest level. A text notification appeared. Congratulations, your Gate of Summoning has been successfully upgraded to a Grade 1 Supreme Building. You can summon 20 billion subjects every day. You will summon 2 billion professionals from the subjects every day. Prompt, under the influence of the unique title of the race, Glory of the Pioneer 14, the number of subjects you can summon every day has reached 44,223,517,000. 200 million and 15 professionals will definitely appear among the subjects you summon every day. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction after reading it. A Grade 2 Supreme God level gate of summoning had 31,585,965,500 subjects. After being buffed by the Glory of the Pioneer 14, it had increased by 14 times, becoming 4,422,351,7,000 people. Furthermore, there were 15 Grade 2 Supreme Master God tiers among them. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Every day, he would freeload more than 400 billion subjects with a lower limit of legendary tier strength, including more than 10 Supreme Gods. If Regal Great Solar had such a channel, he would probably wake up smiling every day. Then, he glanced at the requirement for the Gate of Summoning to level up. Construction upgrade, 50 Zi units of wood, 50 Zi units of fine sand, 50 Zi units of metal, 50 Zi units of stone, 1000 Grade 2 Supreme God Divine Crystals, territory upgraded to Grade 2 Supreme God. The upgrade of the Gate of Summoning was still as simple and unadorned as ever. Compared to the upgrade requirements of other buildings, the upgrade of the Gate of Summoning was like a pro-poor building. Then, he returned to the Kingdom of God and sent someone to call Mugu, Zhang Fugui, and Carol Molly over. The three of them walked into the shrine and arrived in front of Zhou Zhou. Greetings, Your Majesty. Chapter 1863, Upgrading Territory. Upgrading the Gate of Summoning. Increase in Lord Talent, 2. The three of them said respectfully. The territory has now been upgraded to a Grade 2 Supreme Territory. Tell me about your respective upgrades after the territory has been upgraded to a Grade 2 Supreme Territory. Zhou Zhou came back to his senses and said to them with a smile. Mugu was the first to walk out when he heard that. He stated respectfully to Zhou Zhou. Your Majesty, the Scarlet Primordial Mother Nest that I'm currently in has been upgraded from Grade 1 Supreme God to Grade 2 Supreme God. The number of Mist Mothers that each Scarlet Brood Mother can produce has increased from 2 billion to 5 billion. Each Mist Mother's Mist Mother world can now nurture 5 trillion fog monsters. 5 billion Mist Mothers can nurture a total of 250 Gaia unit fog monsters. The 3 Scarlet Brood Mothers are the 750 Gaia unit fog monsters. In addition, the quality and efficiency of cultivating high-quality Scarlet Heirs has also increased. Currently, I can nurture 10 Grade 2 Supreme God Scarlet Supreme Gods in a day. As for the other God Spirits, they will remain the same as before. As long as the Scarlet Fog does not disappear, I can nurture them without limit. Mugu said. When Zhou Zhou heard this, a smile appeared on his face. A total of 750 Gaia unit fog monsters were produced every day. This in itself was an extremely terrifying number. If he used these foggy monsters to nurture his soldier type, with the enhancement of his Lord Talent and title, he would be able to obtain 1,500 Gaia units Supreme God Realm Soldier Recruitment Books, 1,500 Gaia units Supreme God Realm Soldier Class Change Certificate, 1,500 Gaia units Supreme Holy Mage God Recruitment Books, and 1,500 Gaia units Supreme Holy Mage God Class Change Certificate. Which meant, from tomorrow onwards, he would be able to recruit a total of 80 Gaia unit recruits just by recruiting soldiers and changing classes. Currently, he only had around 1,000 Gaia unit troops under his command. One summon. It could directly summon 6 times the total number of his troops. Moreover, these 6,000 Gaia unit soldiers were at least legendary tier elementary grade soldiers. The strongest soldiers were all legendary advanced grade soldiers who were only one step away from becoming God spirits. With just a little tempering, they would be able to advance to the lower God spirit realm. Just thinking about it made Zhou Zhou click his tongue. This original Scarlet Brood Mother, coupled with his other innate abilities, had grown in a few rounds. It simply allowed him to obtain the number of soldiers every day, reaching a level that could be called science fiction. Even Zhou Zhou felt that it was unreal. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath and immediately said to Mugu. Of your 15 billion Mist Mothers, 7.5 billion will be used to nurture the Chaos Ruler, and the other 7.5 billion will be used to nurture the Primordial Holy Cannon. Yes, Your Majesty. Mugu nodded respectfully and retreated. Zhang Fugui then stepped forward. Reporting to Your Majesty, the number of our mysterious merchant chamber of commerce has actually not changed much after our territory was upgraded to a Grade 2 Supreme Territory. Or rather, our mysterious merchant chamber of commerce is no longer limited by numbers. As long as your majesty wants more mysterious merchant, we can recruit infinitely from the supreme great cosmos. We can recruit as many mysterious merchants as we want. Our treasure hunting ability has improved again in terms of probability. In the future, when we go out to do business, we should be able to bring back at least 1 billion god-tier treasures each time. At most, we can obtain supreme god-level treasures. Zhang Fugui said respectfully. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. Ever since the mysterious merchant chamber of commerce had been upgraded to supreme unique, all the upper limit restrictions had been lifted for him. There were naturally good and bad things to do. The bad thing was that if the mysterious merchant chamber of commerce wanted to improve in the future, most of them would have to rely on themselves to take the initiative to build and improve it. The good thing was that he could completely rely on his own thoughts to build and improve the mysterious chamber of commerce. Currently, the mysterious merchant chamber of commerce was already large enough. Zhou Zhou did not want to increase the numbers for the time being. In terms of safety, the Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court would send Supreme Will Realm experts to protect their trade, so Zhou Zhou did not have to worry about this. He thought about it. And took the initiative to ask, Zhang Fugui, is there anything that the mysterious merchant chamber of commerce wants to upgrade? Reporting to your majesty. Zhang Fugui said respectfully, currently, our mysterious merchant chamber of commerce actually doesn't have anything that needs to be improved at the moment. However, when we trade in the ultimate void great cosmos, we are restricted by inter-universe teleportation arrays. The scope of our trade and the targets are very limited. Your Majesty, please arrange the inter-universe teleportation arrays in the various universes in the ultimate void great cosmos. Only then can our mysterious chamber of commerce play its greatest role and provide your Majesty with more wealth and treasures. If your Majesty is still willing to help us, why don't your Majesty give us the extra divine artifacts, Master God tier divine artifacts, and Supreme divine artifacts in your hands to operate? The divine artifact that His Majesty possesses can allow His Majesty to become an overlord in the ultimate void great cosmos just by relying on his wealth. Our mysterious merchant chamber of commerce is confident that we can convert these divine artifacts into wealth and even power. Zhou Zhou nodded. He indeed had too many divine artifacts. It was even to the extent that the gods in the entire supreme great cosmos were about to be unable to digest it. Under such circumstances, rather than letting it rot in his hands, it was better to exchange it for something he needed. However, there were still some things that he had to remind him of. Don't be careless and sell our divine artifacts to the enemy. Zhou Zhou reminded. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I will strictly control the total number of divine artifacts that will flow into each lord's faction. I won't cause any major accidents. Perhaps after I trade these divine artifacts of His Majesty to the ultimate void great cosmos, the strength of those lord factions might not be strong but weak instead. Zhang Fugui said with a smile. Zhou Zhou smiled. That was possible. After a lord's faction obtained a divine artifact, their strength would increase. A portion of the lords would definitely want to use the increase in their strength to expand to the other factions around them. If they wanted to expand, it would definitely cause a war. Once a war broke out, even the victor of the war would be weakened in a short period of time. This was also the reason why Zhang Fugui said that they were weak instead of strong. Don't even think about nurturing some enemies. You have to use the transaction of these divine artifacts to pave the way for our Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to make some friends in the ultimate void great cosmos in the future. For example, befriend some friends who are willing to build inter-universe teleportation arrays in the other party's universe. But it's only one way. We can only teleport to the other party's side. We can't let the other party teleport to our side. Towards the end, Zhou Zhou reminded. The reason why he said this was not because he was afraid of the invasion of other universes. With the Supreme Will, a top-notch transcendent level expert with a Supreme Will, on their side, unless an Eternal Realm expert descended from the opposite side, Supreme Great Cosmos was an existence that almost no one dared to provoke in the entire Ultimate Void Cosmos. Who would dare to take the risk of offending the Supreme Will to invade the Supreme Great Cosmos? The reason why he didn't want the experts of other universes to enter their universe was that he was worried that the illusionist clan's existence would be discovered by those outsiders. As long as the illusionist clan was known by the life forms and appeared in their imagination, they would be teleported, born, and revived. Freeobnov.com. This kind of method was impossible to guard against. He did not want to send the illusionist clan to the entire ultimate void great cosmos just because he wanted to build a teleportation array. then he would be the sinner of the entire ultimate void cosmos. He didn't want to do such a stupid thing. Yes, Your Majesty. I think so too. Zhang Fugui said seriously. Zhou Zhou nodded and said. Then I'll leave the transaction of the divine artifact to you. However, there's no need to carry out supreme divine artifact transactions for the time being. I'll only carry out transactions between Master God tier divine artifacts and those below that level. After our mysterious merchant chamber of commerce gains a firm foothold in the entire ultimate void great cosmos, it won't be too late to trade for supreme divine artifacts or even higher level holy artifacts. Your Majesty is wise. Zhang Fugui said respectfully. Chapter 1864, Escort. 1. Zhou Zhou nodded. Zhang Fugui took the initiative to leave. Carol Molly stood up and said respectfully. Reporting to Your Majesty, after the territory was upgraded to a Grade 2 Supreme God, our Paramita sacred boat already has 500 clergymen from the capital units, 500 priests from the capital units, 500 nuns from the capital units, and 5 life paladins from the Gai unit. These clergymen are enough to complete the war healing mission and the war resurrection mission. Also, currently, there are already 500 trillion high-level divine duty members of the Paramita sacred boat's God spirit level. Every one of them has mastered the resurrection spells, and they can resurrect the deities of our country alone. My strength has also broken through the bottleneck and reached the level of a Grade 2 Supreme God. Currently, I can resurrect about 50 Grade 4 Supreme Gods and below every day. Zhou Zhou nodded and he was deep in thought. He had to upgrade the Paramita sacred boat to the Supreme level, the only Lord talent. This way, he could revive a Supreme Will Realm expert. The Yellow River Emperor sword in his hand could only resurrect one Supreme Willpower Realm expert every day. There were too few of them. Now, he had many quasi-Supreme Will Realm experts advancing to the Supreme Will Realm every day. One resurrection spot was definitely not enough. He needed more. Then, Zhou Zhou chatted with them for a while before letting them return. Then, with a thought, Zhou Zhou summoned the 7 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts to his side. After he exchanged a few words with them, he activated his powers again. In the next second, the world changed. He had already appeared in the Supreme Domain. When he arrived at the Supreme Domain again, Zhou Zhou seemed to be very familiar with it. He directly led his subordinates to the welcoming banquet. Along the way, he had encountered many Supreme Willpower experts who had participated in the welcome banquet. Unlike last night, these Supreme Will Realm experts were clearly more enthusiastic tonight. They were all asking about Zhou Zhou's well-being, as if Zhou Zhou was the main character of this banquet and not the 7 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts. Zhou Zhou naturally knew the source of their attitude. If it was said that nurturing 2 Supreme Will Realm experts last time might be a test of luck, then, this time, he had nurtured 7 new Supreme Will Realm experts in one go. It could definitely not be described as luck. These Supreme Will Realm experts already understood. This common people's regal definitely had the means or talent to continuously create a large number of Supreme Will Realm experts. Even though they were already Supreme Will Realm experts, their subordinates were not. If he could push his subordinates to the common people's regal and advance to the Supreme Will Realm, wouldn't he have a Supreme Will Realm helper? Who wouldn't be envious? On the contrary, if there was a Supreme Will Realm expert who was arrogant and unwilling to curry favor with Zhou Zhou, he did not care about nurturing a Supreme Will Realm expert. Under such circumstances, the other Supreme Will Realm experts had more and more Supreme Will Realm helpers around them. If he was still alone, wouldn't the difference be obvious? In the long run, originally, the gap between Supreme Willpower experts of the same level would become larger and larger. The unchanging principle of being beaten up if one fell behind would also appear on such an inflexible loner. Therefore, as long as they did not want to be beaten up, currying favor with Zhou Zhou was a must. Zhou Zhou did not treat they with a cold attitude. He treated them like good friends and chatted and laughed with these Supreme Will Realm experts. This also made these Supreme Will Realm experts admire Zhou Zhou even more. They had seen many arrogant fellows who became famous at a young age. However, it was extremely rare for them to remain humble after becoming famous at a young age. The common people's regal was undoubtedly such a person. Just this naturally humble and friendly attitude made these Supreme Will Realm experts feel that this common people's regal had a bright future. There was a reason why the Supreme Will had chosen him as the Supreme Lord's last reserve army. This common people's regal indeed had something that other Supreme Lord reserve army did not have. And so, more and more Supreme Will Realm experts gathered beside Zhou Zhou. As a result, when they arrived at the venue of the welcoming banquet, it even formed a strange scene. The other Supreme Will Realm experts and nomological life forms who had come to the welcoming banquet venue in advance watched this scene in amazement. They sighed at Zhou Zhou's current reputation. There was nothing wrong with thinking about it. In 2 days, he had nurtured 9 Supreme Will Realm experts. Anyone who came would receive such treatment. Furthermore, he was a Supreme Lord Reserve Army that was personally chosen by the Supreme Will. Due to various reasons, the common people's regal was really too worth befriending in the eyes of the Supreme Will Realm experts. After Zhou Zhou arrived, he wanted to sit down. However, there were simply too many Supreme Will Realm experts surrounding him and communicating with him. If he sat down, the other Supreme Will Realm experts would have to stand and talk to him. No matter how average Zhou Zhou's EQ was, he knew that this was not good. He simply brought the Supreme Will Realm experts to a spacious corner and communicated with these Supreme Will Realm experts. Most of these Supreme Will Realm experts might have to protect his mysterious caravan in the future and trade in the ultimate void great cosmos. Chapter 1865, Escort 2. It was necessary to have a good relationship with them. A moment later, the God King Heaven Punishment, Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, and Lord of 10,000 Evils also came over. When they saw Zhou Zhou, who was surrounded by Supreme Will Realm experts, they were first stunned. Then, they understood something and laughed softly. The God King Heaven Punishment sighed. There's an earth saying. The new generation replaces the old. Back then, I was as glorious as him. I'm standing there now. I've become my younger brother. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head and smiled. You're in the limelight because you created a willpower skill that summoned your own future timeline from the future timeline. That was because that will technique is very adaptable. Almost every Supreme Will Realm expert can learn it, so you have that kind of glory. At that time, you had already stayed at the Supreme Will Realm for many years before you achieved such an achievement, allowing you to have the glory of that time. And our third brother. He isn't even a Supreme Will Realm expert yet, but he has already achieved so much. In the future, he will sooner or later surpass us at the same level. The God King Heaven Punishment teased with a smile. Then, he sighed with emotion. He had to admit that as Zhou Zhou's actions were learned and praised by the experts of the Supreme Great Cosmos, even someone as proud as he felt a sense of urgency. There was a sense of urgency that might be caught up or even surpassed by future generations. Actually, he wasn't very nervous. He was more excited. It had been a long time. It had been a long time since he had met an opponent who could bring him such a sense of urgency. Even the current Spring Autumn Dharma Lord had not given he such a feeling for a long time. The former him might have been able to. However now, the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord wanted to give him a sense of urgency. It was still lacking. And the common people's regal, who had just risen, could do this. Even God King Heaven Punishment had a strange feeling about himself. The other party was clearly far from his strength level. However, God King Heaven Punishment could sense a clear sense of urgency from the other party. This sense of urgency did not stem from the other party's strength, but from the other party's unfathomable potential and the mystical means that even he felt. For example, Zhou Zhou had nurtured the ability of 9 Supreme Will Realm experts in 2 days. Even God King Heaven Punishment himself felt helpless. It could not be compared. It was completely incomparable. Even if he raised his ability to nurture his subordinates by thousands of times, he still didn't have the confidence to nurture 9 Supreme Will Realm experts in 2 days. The common people's regal did it. This was his ability. Even he admired this ability. Oh yes. Is there any news about the 100 Supreme Will Realm subordinates you entrusted to third brother last time? The God King Heaven Punishment thought of something and asked the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. There's news. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and nodded. Then, he sighed with emotion. They told me that a quasi-supreme will realm cultivator has already successfully comprehended his own will technique. Next, he only needs to combine his will technique with the will power of the supreme will realm to condense the will origin core and officially advance to a supreme will realm existence. It's hard to imagine. It's only been a day. There's already such a remarkable result. My subordinate said that the cultivation environment in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom is simply unbelievable. After they joined the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and became a subject of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, be it their perception or providence, they have greatly increased. The corresponding cultivation resources are simply unbelievably abundant. In addition, they still have a large number of Supreme Will Realm legacies for reference. They felt that if they couldn't advance to the Supreme Will realm in such an environment, they would feel that they were trash. With that, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head with a bitter smile. They will suffer by my side just like they are in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. God King Heaven Punishment laughed out loud when he heard this. Then, he thought of something and gradually stopped laughing. I said that when I asked he how the cultivation environment in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was, he said that it was hard to say. Previously, I thought that Guy had signed some agreement with the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom not to reveal the secret information of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. That's why he was unwilling to tell me about the cultivation environment of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Now that you mention it, I understand. Could he feel that he might hurt me if he says it, so he doesn't want to say it? Ha 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 ha. This time, it was Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord who laughed out loud. It was the first time in thousands of years that he had seen God King Heaven Punishment reveal such an unbelievable expression. Zhou Zhou naturally saw the arrival of God King Heaven Punishment and the other reserve army. However, he was surrounded by these Supreme Will Realm experts and could not leave. He could only greet them from afar. Not long after, the orderly and respectful voices of a group of nomological life forms suddenly sounded, attracting everyone's attention. Welcome, Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar. Zhou Zhou and they didn't gather to chat anymore. They arrived on both sides of the road to welcome the arrival of Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar. Even though these two regals were at the Supreme Will Realm, their true combat strength had reached the level of will transcendence. Moreover, it was not the low-level will transcendence level, but the mid-level or even high-level will transcendence level. Facing such an expert, even someone as proud as God King Heaven Punishment had to show respect. At this moment, Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar walked side by side into the welcoming banquet. When the two lords of the court saw Zhou Zhou, who was waiting quietly by the side of the road, their eyes immediately lit up. They did not even care about the ceremonial guard behind them as they quickly walked to Zhou Zhou's side, leaving him stunned. Brother! The Regal Great Solar said with a smile. Brother! The Regal Great Lunar also smiled and called Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou was at a loss. When did I acknowledge these two good brothers? Ha ha ha! Regal Great Solar laughed and held Zhou Zhou's hand. They came to the seating area and arranged for him to sit in the first seat. Then, he and Regal Great Lunar sat in the second and third seats respectively. Not to mention Zhou Zhou. Even God King Heaven Punishing, Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, Lord of 10,000 Evils, and the other Supreme Will Realm experts were secretly shocked. This Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar were too good to Zhou Zhou, right? Even though he was at the low level, giving the highest first seat to the common people's Regal? Zhou Zhou was also at a loss. He wanted to stand up, but he retreated under Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar's eager gazes. Regal Great Lunar seemed to have noticed Zhou Zhou's embarrassment and comforted him. Brother, don't worry. Today, the Supreme will not sit down, so the first seat was originally empty. And you're the one who nurtured the 9 Supreme Will Realm existences. Compared to the 7 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts, they are actually not the protagonists of this welcome banquet. You're the protagonist of this welcome banquet. If you don't sit here, who will? Even if we were sitting here, it wouldn't be appropriate. You're the only one who should be sitting here. Zhou Zhou was a careless person. Zhou Zhou put down his anxiety and sat there openly after hearing them. At this moment, the Regal Great Solar smiled and said, Brother, do you know why Regal Great Lunar and I call you brother? Zhou Zhou did not hesitate and said directly, it's because of those 2 quasi-supreme will realm experts who are about to advance, right? He had just finished reading the summary of today's battle and naturally knew that 2 of the 15 quasi-supreme will realm experts who had entered the reincarnation sacred palace to cultivate and prepare to break through were from the Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court. Now that Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar were treating him so eagerly, Zhou Zhou could only think of this reason. That's right. The Regal Great Solar laughed and said, Brother, I never expected you to give me such a big surprise just after I handed the 500 Supreme Gods to you. It's only been a day. Chapter 1866 Prepare to break through. I'm getting married. 1. Our Sun Divine Court has also tried to nurture the Supreme Will Realm. However, such an existence can't be nurtured by conventional methods at all. The more we nurture him, the slower his growth speed will be in the later stages. In the end, the speed at which they grow at the Supreme God level is even slower than those Supreme Gods who don't have any forces to rely on and only rely on their own hard work to advance. Ever since we tried it, we've understood a principle. True experts have never been nurtured step by step. It's the existences who really have great wisdom, perseverance, and luck that rely on their own wisdom, perseverance, and luck to gradually increase. I didn't expect you to break even this bit of common sense. Supreme Will Realm experts are like assembly line products in your hands. They can be manufactured batch by batch. Brother, tell me, what tricks do you have? The regal Great Solar asked. He was really curious. Or rather, any existence present, even the Supreme Will, was curious about Zhou Zhou's method. It was no exaggeration to say that Zhou Zhou's methods could easily determine the fate of a great cosmos. Who wouldn't be curious? It could already be considered that he had extremely strong endurance for him to be able to hold back and ask now. There are, of course, tricks. Zhou Zhou nodded. What trick? The regal Great Solar and regal Great Lunar looked at Zhou Zhou. Even though the other Supreme Will Realm existences around him seemed to be in front of him, their attention was also quietly focused on Zhou Zhou. Even them, the God King Heaven Punishment, was no exception. That's investing resources. The current him wouldn't be afraid of any enemy. However, I've also invested resources. The regal Great Solar was puzzled. That's not enough. Zhou Zhou looked at regal Great Solar seriously and said, how difficult is it to nurture a Supreme Will Realm expert? Therefore, if you want to nurture a Supreme Will Realm expert by investing resources, you need to invest a vast number of resources in all directions. If we have the resources to nurture a Will Transcendent level expert, even if the person we nurture is a Black Iron tier life form, can we also nurture him into a Supreme Will Realm expert? Brother, do you think I'm right? The regal Great Solar, regal Great Lunar. The other Supreme Will Realm experts were speechless. That was the logic. However, who would use resources to nurture a Supreme Will Realm expert? Wasn't that using a cannon to kill mosquitoes? The Supreme Will Realm experts present complained in their hearts. As for the regal Great Solar, regal Great Lunar, and God King Heaven Punishment, they were deep in thought. They seemed to understand what Zhou Zhou meant. This logic was also very simple. As long as he used extraordinary resources to nurture life forms and lowered the target of nurturing by a level, he could naturally easily raise the target to the target level. Therefore, Zhou Zhou had been using resources that transcended the level of will to nurture Supreme Will Realm experts. That was why he could nurture 9 Supreme Will Realm experts in 2 days. They immediately came to a realization. Except, they smiled bitterly. How could they have resources that transcended the level of willpower? Even if there was, they would only use this resource on themselves and nurture themselves into a Supreme Will Realm expert. How could they use such precious resources to nurture a Supreme God into a Supreme Will Realm expert? Wouldn't that be a waste? They could not help but look at Zhou Zhou. He had long heard that this newly advanced Supreme Lord Reserve Army was extraordinarily rich. He was clearly only a latecomer who had risen in less than a year, but his financial resources were almost comparable to the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, who had always been famous for his treasures and wealth. They had only heard of it previously. He finally felt it for himself. He was really rich. He would use resources to nurture his will to transcend the level to nurture the Supreme Will Realm. They did not even dare to think about such a thing. It didn't make sense. However, after thinking about it, it seemed to be the only reason why he could quickly nurture a Supreme Will Realm expert in a short period of time. They could not be envious. They couldn't do it either. Hence, they did not ask further. It was to prevent them from feeling inferior the more they asked. Among the people present, the regal Great Solar, regal Great Lunar, and God King Heaven Punishment, they were still thinking. Even though they was indeed shocked by Zhou Zhou's words at the beginning, after coming back to their senses, they thought of something else. From the information sent by them to the Supreme God of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom did not directly give them too many cultivation resources. They had indeed obtained some free resources. These resources were indeed not bad. Most of them were Supreme God level resources, and a few were even cultivation resources at the Supreme Will Realm. However, a resource with a transcendent will? At least on the surface, they was indeed not directly given one. However, there were indeed resources with transcendent wills. They could also obtain them. However, they needed to fight and obtain military merits. They had to exchange military merits in the military merit exchange system to improve themselves. This was naturally one of the aspects that Zhou Zhou had mentioned. He wanted to use the resources to nurture a supreme god to advance to the supreme will realm. However, they felt that this was not the main point. The information sent by the supreme gods sent by them emphasized it. Chapter 1867 Prepare to break through. I'm getting married, too. After they came to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to cultivate, be it their perception, cultivation speed, or the success rate of breaking through the bottleneck, they had all greatly increased. It was as if there was a mysterious power augmenting them, making them seem to have divine help in their cultivation. This mysterious power was the reason why their cultivation level was rapidly approaching the supreme will realm. When they thought of this, they seemed to have come to a realization. Perhaps the most important resource that the common people's regal mentioned was actually this unique cultivation environment. Or rather, a cultivation environment with a transcendent will. It was precisely because of this cultivation environment that the common people's regal could silently nurture the supreme god under his command to the supreme will realm without investing too much willpower and resources. After they understood what Zhou Zhou meant, not only did they not heave a sigh of relief, but they also became even more envious. Compared to ordinary resources, this kind of cultivation environment was the rarest. With such cultivation resources, they would not exchange for them even if others took out a large number of cultivation resources with transcendent willpower. The regal Great Solar didn't ask further. This was because they knew that it was impossible for them to replicate this unique cultivation environment. Never mind. Wouldn't it be the same if he built a good relationship with the common people's regal and obediently handed his supreme god to the other party to nurture? Why did he have to go through so much trouble? The regal Great Solar and the others smiled and shook their heads in their hearts. Then, they chatted with Zhou Zhou about something else. A moment later, the welcome feast officially began. The Supreme Will led the 7 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts out from the backstage of the welcoming banquet and arrived in front of the Supreme Will Realm experts to talk. Actually, there was usually a segment where new Supreme Will Realm experts were invited to preach the Dao to the Supreme Will Realm experts present. However, they also knew that these newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts were all subordinates of the common people's regal, and the common people's regal had to go to many battlefields every day to fight. They needed the help of these newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts, so they did not force them. After the host and guests had a good time, Zhou Zhou chatted briefly with the Supreme Will Realm expert. After being encouraged by the Supreme Will, Zhou Zhou left with the 7 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts. After the 8 protagonists left, the remaining 50-odd Supreme Will Realm experts also took the initiative to leave. Some did not leave and still sat in their seats, eating, drinking, and playing. At this moment, a Supreme Will Realm expert suddenly said, "Do you think a new Supreme Will Realm will be born in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom tomorrow morning?" "No way. These 9 have already advanced to the Supreme Will Realm. Their foundation should have been exhausted, right?" "I think so. The Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom of the Common People's Regal has 2 new Supreme Will Realm experts on the first day and 9 new Supreme Will Realm experts on the second day. There's no reason for there to be no news on the third day. This doesn't count. It's a coincidence that a Supreme Will Realm expert was born. How can it be calculated like this? Regardless of whether you believe it or not, I'm not leaving tonight. I'll wait for tomorrow morning to see if a new Supreme Will Realm expert will be born in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. I'm not leaving either. I want to eat this melon online." On the first day, 2 new Supreme Will Realm experts were born. It can be said to be luck. On the second day, 7 new Supreme Will Realm experts were born. It can be said to be a coincidence. If another new Supreme Will Realm expert was born on the third day, it would be an unquestionable strength. Ilaha, since none of you are leaving, I won't leave either. There are so many delicious food here. I really can't bear to leave. Yes, yes. The Supreme Will Realm experts said one after another. Some Supreme Will Realm experts who had already left immediately returned in high spirits when they heard that there was such a banquet. They waited at the banquet with these Supreme Will Realm experts for tomorrow to arrive. In the Reincarnation Sacred Palace of the Blazing Sun Divine Capital, Zhou Zhou returned the 7 Supreme Ilm experts. He immediately returned to the Reincarnation Sacred Palace and began to cultivate. Before he began cultivating, he extended his right hand and saw 2 pills appear in his hand. One was the upper-level Supreme Will Realm Holy Pill Supreme Sacred Heart Pill that he had obtained from the Chaos Sea of the Myriad Worlds. The other was the mid-level Supreme Will Realm Sacred Pill Great Lunar Jade Soul Pill that the Moon Eclipse Sacred Princess had given him not long ago. He looked at the 2 divine pills and suddenly smiled. Even though these 2 pills are quite effective. But I don't need it anymore. He muttered to himself. He had the supreme sacred body and many top lord talents and top inheritances. If he could not even break through to the supreme will realm, it would simply not make sense. As for the great lunar jade soul pill that the moon eclipse sacred princess mentioned, it had the effect of increasing one's perception. It would not take effect on him either. His perception had already reached the peak he could reach at this stage. If he wanted to improve further, it was not something that a mere supreme will realm saint pill could help him with. A sacred pill with a transcendent will might be a little useful. However, it was only a little. Only treasures at the eternal immortal realm could greatly increase his comprehension. He shook his head and called Bai Yun over. Then, he casually rewarded the other party with these 2 pills. When Bai Yun saw the effects of these 2 pills, her face immediately revealed shock. Your Majesty, this is too precious. I can't take it. These 2 saint pills are the best choice for your Majesty. Bai Yun immediately said respectfully, his voice was very firm. His Majesty had yet to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. How could he use such a treasure that could greatly increase the probability of advancing to the Supreme Will Realm? He should let His Majesty use it. Only when His Majesty was stronger could the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom be stronger and more guaranteed. His Majesty was the foundational existence of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Bai Yun understood this. Therefore, even if he also wanted these 2 pills, he still firmly rejected them. Do you think this emperor will need these 2 divine pills with his aptitude? Zhou Zhou said calmly. His Majesty's talent is unprecedented, so he naturally doesn't need it. Bai Yun opened her mouth and finally said these words with a bitter smile. All the experts in the Supreme Great Cosmos were incomparably impressed by His Majesty's potential. Even God King Heaven Punishment, they felt inferior in front of His Majesty. He had to admit this. It's good that you know. With this emperor's potential, I can advance to the Supreme Will Realm without these 2 divine pills. Bai Yun. You've been following this emperor since this emperor was at his weakest. This emperor once promised that as long as you follow this emperor will treat you well. The same goes for you. Take these 2 divine pills. Now that you're the legion commander of my Blazing Sun army, it'll be difficult for you to submit to someone with the strength of a grade 4 supreme god all day long. Especially since there are so many quasi-supreme will realm and new supreme will realm generals in your Blazing Sun army. You can't use your prestige and experience to intimidate them. The most important thing is still strength. Go on. Break through to the Supreme Will Realm as soon as possible. Don't let our strongest Blazing Sun army be dissatisfied because of your strength. Zhou Zhou said calmly. Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yun felt a little ashamed. Her strength was still a little weak. His Majesty's progress. She took a deep breath and made up her mind to strive to break through to the Supreme Will Realm after tonight. Then, she prepared to exchange for a few divine medicines and inheritances with transcendent wills from the military merit exchange system to increase her cultivation speed and strive to reach the limit of the quasi-supreme will realm in 3 days. Finally, she would use these 2 holy medicines to reach the supreme will realm in one go. After she made up her mind, she bade Zhou Zhou farewell and left the place where Zhou Zhou was in seclusion. She found another seclusion place in the reincarnation sacred palace and first exchanged for the divine medicine and inheritance she needed before starting to cultivate. Chapter 1868 Challenging the Revered Flame 1. The next day, in the reincarnation sacred palace. At that moment, Zhou Zhou was sitting cross-legged on the Dao comprehension futon, forming seals with his hands as he cultivated. His entire body emitted a profound aura of laws and will. These nomological auras and will auras vaguely condensed into an illusory painting behind him. In this painting, there was a map of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's territory. He looked at it carefully. One could even see all kinds of strange, magnificent, or ordinary buildings on the map. The pedestrians walking between the buildings, the extraordinary individuals cultivating in the beautiful mountains and rivers, the small animals in the dense forests by the side of the road, and the extraordinary tier beasts who occupied the mountains but did not offend the subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. As long as one took a closer look, they would be able to see everything clearly. And they had a common name, which was the common regal. Boom! Zhou Zhou slowly opened his eyes. There seemed to be a divine dragon roaring around him. At the same time, in the supreme domain, at the center of the domain, the supreme domain that was observing all the great will models of the ultimate void great cosmos seemed to have sensed something. It looked in the direction of the blazing sun divine kingdom in surprise. I can't believe it's come to this so quickly. This successor of mine is already at the same level, far surpassing God King Heaven Punishment and Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. And is this the will of all living beings? The Supreme Will could not help but exclaim, unlimited tolerance, unlimited growth potential. What a shocking will! He already has the possibility of spying on the eternal immortal realm in the future just by relying on this will. After exclaiming in surprise, a smile appeared on his face. He was naturally very happy to see his successor with such potential. I wonder if this little fellow will really be able to spy on the eternal palace like me in the future. If I had a companion, it wouldn't have been in vain for me to spend so much effort to select this last Supreme Lord Reserve Army. He said faintly. The dusk battlefield. God King Heaven Punishment, who was leading the Heavenly Punishment Army in battle, suddenly sensed something. He suddenly looked up in the direction of the blazing sun divine kingdom. His eyes lit up as he laughed out loud. Good third brother! Good third brother! I knew this day would come. Break through well. I'll give you a big gift later. With that, he looked at the enemies of the illusionist clan on the battlefield again. Black lightning flashed in his cold eyes, and his aura was so imposing that he didn't dare to infringe. He had the supreme aura of the myriad thunder regal, making people want to worship and kneel just by standing there. You should be honored. Because this divine being wants to kill all of you. The God King Heaven Punishment said indifferently. Let's celebrate for my brother. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already turned into a bolt of black lightning and charged at a low-level illusionist clan whose willpower had transcended the level. In the myriad world's chaos sea, at this moment, Spring Autumn Dharma Lord was still fishing by the shore. Looking at the boundless sea of chaos, Spring Autumn Dharma Lord felt in a good mood. Ever since Zhou Fight led his army to the eternal continent and the river of time and space to hunt down the historical heroes summoned by him, Spring Autumn Dharma Lord had been extremely lucky recently because he had been able to benefit from Zhou Fight's supreme luck. From time to time, he would be able to fish out transcendent level treasures. When he was the luckiest, he had even fished up a treasure that was beneficial to his path. It had been a long time since he had caught such a treasure. Indeed, I spent so much effort to keep Zhou Fight by my side. It was the right choice. Even though it's only a clone, I've benefited greatly. I wonder what it would be like if Zhou Zhou's main body was fishing beside me. Could I not be able to catch an eternal immortal realm treasure? I don't think so. I've owned this myriad world's chaos pool for so many years, but I've only caught one eternal immortal realm treasure. I can't use that treasure. It's very useless. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head with a bitter smile. His luck could not be said to be bad. However, it was still far from what he had imagined even though he was an experienced fisherman. At the same time, in the Supreme Great Cosmos and even the Crimson Great Cosmos, all the Supreme Gods, Supreme Will Realm experts, and even transcendent level experts who had already grasped the power of will seemed to sense something as they looked at the blazing sun divine kingdom where Zhou Zhou was. A thought naturally appeared in their mind. Common people's regal. He was about to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. In the next moment, the starry sky of the Supreme Great Cosmos and even the Crimson Great Cosmos suddenly changed. The phantom of the blazing sun divine kingdom's territory slowly appeared in the cosmos of the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos. The buildings, subjects, behemoths, technological items, mountains, cities. All sorts of things in the blazing sun divine kingdom appeared in the starry sky at this moment. All the experts were stunned when they saw this scene. They knew that this was the phenomenon of common people's regal advancing to the Supreme Will Realm. However, wasn't this phenomenon too terrifying? It could actually envelop the entire Supreme Great Cosmos and Crimson Great Cosmos? This kind of phenomenon was impossible at the Supreme Will Realm. Perhaps only the advancement of a will-transcending expert could do it, right? They were puzzled. However, more than that, he was looking forward to it. Once a common people's regal with such a phenomenon broke through to the Supreme Will Realm, how inflated would their strength be? That lord had only relied on his quasi-supreme will realm cultivation to possess the strength of a quasi-will transcendent before he advanced. Chapter 1869 Challenging the Revered Flame. 2. Could he be directly fighting against a transcendent level expert once he broke through? If that was the case, even the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord and God King Heaven Punishment would be inferior to him. This was because these two Supreme Lord Reserve Army had killed low-level extraordinary enemies when they were at the middle-level Supreme Will Realm and high-level Supreme Will Realm. If the common people's regal could kill a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert after advancing to the low-level Supreme Will Realm, then the common people's regal would break the record left behind by the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and God King Heaven Punishment. Moreover, for a long time in the future, there would probably be no new talent who could surpass this record. No, not to mention surpassing. Even if they could catch up to this record, it would be extremely difficult for those who came later. At the thought of this, they began to look forward to it. He was looking forward to whether the common people's regal could create a record that belonged to him. At the same time, in the reincarnation sacred palace, Zhou Zhou, who was sitting cross-legged on the Dao comprehension futon, slowly opened his eyes. I've already comprehended my will skill. The next breakthrough is not difficult for me at all. The next breakthrough is not difficult for me at all. However, it's really boring to break through just like that. Zhou Zhou looked up at the sky, his eyes shining with a shocking light. Swoosh! Eli's divine body instantly vanished from the spot. Zhou Zhou's divine body suddenly appeared in the sky above the high continent. He looked at the scene below. Below was land of lava. The high continent was incomparably vast. However, this land of lava actually occupied 1% of the entire high continent. It could be seen how large this place was. However, because the climate here was harsh, the laws were not obvious, and the resources were very barren, it was extremely unsuitable for life forms to live in. Therefore, even though this place was vast, no faction was stationed here. Back then, when Zhou Zhou's avatars led the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's army here, they saw that there were no factions stationed here. They directly ignored this place and went to fight elsewhere. Later, Zhou Zhou learned from the Supreme Will that this was the place where the low-level illusionist clan was sealed. Revered Flame! Zhou Zhou suddenly roared. His voice was earth-shattering, shaking all the experts in the myriad worlds. Come out! His voice reverberated endlessly, lingering in the myriad worlds for a long time. This immediately attracted the attention of countless experts. When they saw Zhou Zhou roaring at a desolate land of lava, they immediately started discussing. Currently, in the myriad worlds, the common people's regal was indisputably the most popular existence. Even the Supreme Will valued it greatly. Therefore, no matter what Zhou Zhou did, it would attract the attention and curiosity of other experts. Who is Revered Flame? How would I know? In the myriad worlds, there are many people with the title of Revered Flame. Who knows which Revered Flame the common people's regal is looking for? Idiot! You can't guess it. With the identity, strength, and power of the common people's regal, do you think the Revered Flame he is referring to is an existence below the Supreme God level? At least an existence at the Supreme Will Realm or higher. That's true, but I've never heard of anyone called Revered Flame among the Supreme Will Realm experts. Could it be an elite from outside the universe? Latest news, latest news! The Sun Divine Court just sent news that the Revered Flame summoned by the common people's regal is a low-level illusionist clan that was suppressed by the Supreme Will countless years ago. This illusionist clan has been suppressed under the Supreme Continent, and very few experts know about this enemy. Only ancient forces like the Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court know such secrets. The Regal Great Solar personally said that the common people's regal should want to challenge the Revered Flame under this high continent. He told us not to get close. Be careful that the immortals will fight and the ghosts will suffer. It's actually an enemy personally sealed by the Supreme Will. It actually has the strength of a low-level will transcendent realm expert. Wait. Something's wrong. The common people's regal doesn't seem to be at the Supreme Will realm yet, right? Regal Great Solar actually said that the common people's regal actually wants to challenge a low-level will transcendent realm expert? What kind of joke is this? Using a quasi-supreme will realm body to challenge a true will transcendence expert. If the common people's regal really succeeds, then he will not be the number one prodigy in the supreme great cosmos, but the number one prodigy in the entire ultimate void great cosmos. There's nothing wrong with that. There was also a period of time when I traveled in the ultimate void great cosmos. At that time, I heard that the strongest genius of the ultimate void great cosmos was only at the middle level supreme will realm. He challenged low-level experts with transcendent willpower. He was probably at the level of God King Heaven Punishment and Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. However, even with such a battle result, the experts of the ultimate void great cosmos thought that that genius was the number one genius in the great cosmos. There's nothing wrong with that. There was also a period of time when I traveled in the ultimate void great cosmos. At that time, I heard that the strongest genius of the ultimate void great cosmos was only at the middle level supreme will realm. He challenged low-level experts with transcendent willpower. He was probably at the level of God King Heaven Punishment and Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. However, even with such a battle result, the experts of the ultimate void great cosmos thought that that genius was the number one genius in the great cosmos. The experts discussed among themselves. They were all waiting for the battle between Zhou Zhou and revered flame with different emotions. In the sky above the high continent, Zhou Zhou looked at the motionless magma below and sneered. Do you think I can't do anything to you if you don't come out? Zhou Zhou flipped his right hand and saw a scarlet token appear in his hand. This token was called the Flame Token, and it was given to him by the Supreme Will. When the Supreme Will told his clone about the enemy of the illusionist clan being sealed under the Supreme Continent, it also gave him this Flame Token. In this way, if he wanted to challenge revered flame in the future, he could use this Flame Token as a key to undo the other party's seal and release him. Then, he could kill the other party or let the other party kill him. As for whether revered flame would harm the Supreme Continent or even the myriad worlds in the future, that would be up to the Supreme Will. At that moment, after Zhou Zhou took out the Flame Token, he could clearly sense intense breathing coming from the magma ground below. Can't take it anymore. Zhou Zhou smiled faintly. Then come out. With that, IE crushed the Flame Token in his hand. Freeobnov.com. As the Flame Token shattered, he saw the Supreme Continent below begin to shake. Furthermore, the shaking became more and more obvious as time passed. In less than a moment, the entire Supreme Continent began to shake. At this moment, an explosive and carefree voice resounded from beneath the high continent. Ha ha ha! The Supreme Will actually sent young boy like you to deal with me. I think the Supreme Will is not far from death. His brain is actually so muddled. A quasi-Supreme Will realm expert actually wants to cross an entire level to deal with a low-level expert like me. Aren't you afraid of making the other party laugh out loud? But since you want to die so much, then I'll fulfill your wish. If the Supreme Will knows that I killed his most valued successor, he will definitely be very upset. Ha 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 ha. Accompanied by wild laughter, a resplendent flame suddenly shot out from the ground. Like a meteor, it rushed in front of Zhou Zhou in the blink of an eye and clawed at his head. Snap! A jade white hand grabbed the claw that was emitting flames. Zhou Zhou looked at the red claw in his hand and smiled faintly at revered flame, who was burning with flames. Nice fire. However, you think too highly of yourself to think that you can take me down with the power of that claw. The current him wouldn't be afraid of any enemy. The revered flame's pupils contracted slightly. The experts of the myriad worlds were in an uproar when they saw this scene. Chapter 1870 Fighting the Revered Flame. 1. When the experts of the myriad worlds saw that Zhou Zhou had actually easily blocked the attack of a low-level expert with a transcendent will, they were all very shocked. At this moment, Zhou Zhou had not officially broken through to the Supreme Will realm. Il had only comprehended a will skill and possessed the power of the Supreme Will realm. The current Zhou Zhou could at most be considered a pseudo-Supreme Will realm expert. He also needed to combine I's will technique with the will power of the Supreme Will realm to condense the will origin core and officially advance to the Supreme Will realm. The difference between the two seemed to be only one step, but in fact, the difference was huge. In terms of strength, there was a world of difference. At this moment, the common people's regal could actually block the attack of a low-level expert with one hand? What kind of strength was this? What kind of physical body was this? They only wanted to say one thing in their hearts: terrifying. At this moment, Zhou Zhou saw that he had blocked revered flame's attack with one hand. He was excited and could not help but feel puzzled. His body seemed to be stronger than an ordinary supreme sacred body. An ordinary supreme sacred body could at most block the full strength attack of an upper-level supreme will realm expert at the pseudo-supreme will realm. This was naturally already very strong. However, his supreme sacred body seemed to have advanced to this limit and formed a stronger body. Perhaps it was because of the augmentation of his other abilities. Zhou Zhou had a guess. Even though his supreme sacred body was his strongest physical means, it wasn't his only physical means. Freeobnovel.com. In all other aspects, it was also possible for his body to match a low-level expert with a transcendent will. Zhou Zhou was deep in thought. When Revered Flame saw that Zhou Zhou's clone was actually fighting him, he was instantly enraged. A mere pseudo-supreme will realm actually dares to be distracted in front of me. Die! The Revered Flame's claw that Zhou Zhou had grabbed suddenly changed from a fist to a palm. Dark red flames suddenly spewed out from his palm. The flames rushed straight at Zhou Zhou's face, as if they were going to swallow him in the next second. Zhou Zhou also sensed the danger of the flames. He instantly disappeared from his spot and appeared a light year away behind Revered Flame. Unexpectedly, just as he appeared again, he saw the flames instant transmit in front of him. It was as though he had never disappeared, and he was even closer to Zhou Zhou's face. Swoosh! A low-level prismatic ice crystal appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. When the dark red flames struck the surface of the prismatic ice crystal, most of them were devoured by the prismatic ice crystal. However, a small portion of the crimson flames shattered the prismatic ice crystal and rushed towards Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou raised his hand. Thousands of laws appeared in his palm as he forcefully caught the scarlet flames. He looked at the scarlet flames burning in his palm and frowned slightly. This flame was actually so difficult to deal with. It was still burning his palm as though it wouldn't stop until it was burned to ashes. His myriad method star palm could only slowly absorb the power in the flames to strengthen itself. Hee hee. The Revered Flame sneered and said, "My purgatory sacred flame can instantly burn even 100 Supreme Will Realm experts to death, even low-level experts at the same level as me will have a portion of their bodies permanently burned by my purgatory sacred flame. You're only at the pseudo-Supreme Will Realm. It's simply wishful thinking for you to escape my purgatory sacred flame. A genius like you can be considered one of a kind under the Supreme Will, right? Wait for your death slowly. I really want to see the Supreme Will's heart ache for you." As Revered Flame spoke, an extremely happy expression appeared on his face. It was as if he was doing something that made him very happy. However, in the next second, he revealed a look of astonishment. This was because he actually saw that after his purgatory sacred flame trembled, it seemed to have returned to its original state as it fused into the other party's right hand that was like a starry sky. After absorbing the power of the purgatory sacred flame, the power of the other party's myriad method star palm had clearly increased greatly. The power of will. Moreover, it's the power of will that transcends the level of will. Zhou Zhou smiled faintly and said to the Revered Flame, "Thank you for giving me this big gift." The Revered Flame looked at Zhou Zhou's myriad method star palm for a long time before saying, "This pseudo-will technique of yours has the potential to grow into a transcendence technique in the future." Zhou Zhou nodded calmly. If not for the fact that his myriad method star palm had the potential to grow into a will transcendence skill, he would not have been able to absorb the purgatory sacred flame that made Ilim famous in such a short period of time. This purgatory sacred flame was the transcendence skill of a will transcending expert. To be able to absorb power of this level when Zhou Zhou was at the pseudo-supreme will realm, it was enough to see the terrifying potential of the myriad method star palm. The Revered Flame's expression quickly returned to normal after the initial shock. He thought, as expected of one of the successors chosen by the Supreme Will, "This potential is indeed enough to inherit that guy's legacy." Then, he sneered at Zhou Zhou. "Even though you have the potential to advance to the transcendent level, you're still too weak. If you've already advanced to the Supreme Will realm, you might be able to rely on this technique to fight me. However, you're not even at the Supreme Will realm now. You're only at the pseudo Supreme Will realm. You'll only die in front of me." Chapter 1871 Fighting the Revered Flame. 2. With that, the purgatory sacred flame suddenly ignited all over Ilis' body. This was one of Revered Flame's trump cards, purgatory sacred body. As a fellow sacred body, he naturally could not compare to Zhou Zhou's eternal immortal level inheritance, the supreme sacred body. However, among experts with transcendent will, this purgatory sacred body was already an extremely good battle constitution. Swoosh! The Revered Flame, who had activated the purgatory sacred body, instantly turned into a fiery light and rushed in front of Zhou Zhou, punching him. Zhou Zhou's gaze hardened. He stretched out his right hand and took the punch head-on. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of divine blood. Zhou Zhou was sent flying more than 10 light years away. He forcefully stopped his body and looked at his right hand. He saw that his entire right arm had disappeared. Zhou Zhou sighed inwardly. In the end, he was still an expert whose willpower had transcended. He could not withstand the full strength attack of a low-level expert who was good at fighting even if he had also raised the supreme sacred body to the level of the pseudo-supreme will realm. In the eyes of the experts in the myriad worlds, he had a reputation as a quasi-will transcendent level combat power. However, there was still a huge difference between quasi-will transcendence combat strength and true low-level will transcendence combat strength. These thoughts flashed across Zhou Zhou's mind. When he looked at his right arm again, he realized that his right arm had already recovered completely. The supreme sacred body was not a joke in terms of recovery. Even the damage caused by an expert whose will had surpassed the realm could be recovered in the blink of an eye. The revered flame also saw this scene. His eyes narrowed as he immediately realized that Zhou Zhou's physique was extraordinary. It might even be of a higher grade than his purgatory sacred body. The damage caused by his purgatory sacred body could not be recovered by just any constitution. Also, as the concept god of the illusionist clan, his concept god ability was to burn everything. As long as one was touched by his flames, it was impossible to remove it through ordinary means. However, Zhou Zhou, who only had the strength of a mere pseudo-supreme will realm, had actually recovered so easily. The revered flame's eyes turned red as he watched. What a good constitution! It's even better than my purgatory sacred body. I really want it. Hehe, after killing this fellow, I'll search his will and plunder everything he has learned. This way, I can also have such a constitution. The revered flame's heart was filled with greed for the supreme sacred body. Following that, he couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. He immediately rushed towards Zhou Zhou again and stood beside him. The revered flame had the complete advantage on the battlefield. As for Zhou Zhou, he was at a complete disadvantage. The revered flame relied on his low-level willpower and the purgatory sacred body to suppress Zhou Zhou fearlessly. Even though Zhou Zhou had a supreme will realm martial arts realm, a top-notch supreme sacred body constitution, and a nomological skill with the potential to transcend the level of will, the methods he grasped had plenty of potential, but he lacked combat strength. Perhaps in the future, he could convert all these potentials into strength and crush revered flame. However, he could only be suppressed and beaten by revered flame. In less than a moment, Zhou Zhou was already covered in injuries and was on the verge of death. This was the first time Zhou Zhou had suffered such serious injuries after obtaining the supreme sacred body. The experts of the myriad worlds were also watching this battle. When they saw that Zhou Zhou was about to be beaten to death, some experts wanted to help him regardless of the danger, such as the reincarnation will, Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, God King Heaven Punishment, and the experts under the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. However, with the decree of the Supreme Will, they all gave up and watched the battle obediently. At the same time, they came to a realization. It turned out that the Supreme Will sealed under the High Continent was a test, specially prepared for Zhou Zhou by the Supreme Will. No wonder the Supreme Will had been watching coldly from the sidelines, allowing this transcendent level expert to beat Zhou Zhou up. However, as they looked at Zhou Zhou's injured figure, most of the experts, especially those who were close to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, could not help but reveal looks of worry. With the current strength of the common people's regal, how could he fight against a true low-level expert? The common people's regal was only at the pseudo-supreme will realm now. It was not even at the supreme will realm. Wasn't it a little too confident to challenge a low-level expert whose will had transcended? At the same time, another group of experts had malicious guesses in their hearts. This common people's regal probably knew about the deeds of God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. Back then, they used their strength at the Supreme Will Realm to challenge and defeat experts whose will had transcended. This common people's regal probably wanted to imitate them and break this record to show that LE had surpassed them. Therefore, with the strength of a pseudo-Supreme Will Realm expert, he challenged this low-level expert with a transcendent will. Great! Reabove.com. He would only know that he could not defeat it after challenging it. Let's see how you are going to end this now. They all knew the Supreme Will's personality. Since his challenger had already accepted his challenge, the Supreme Will would definitely not interfere midway, much less save him. Since he had already decided to do something, he had to be responsible for the possible consequences of doing it. This was the Supreme Will's request for his successor. If he could not even fulfill such a request, he was not worthy of the title of Supreme Lord Reserve Army, let alone being saved by the Supreme Will. The God King Heaven Punishment was also watching this unprecedented battle from afar on the dusk battlefield. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord had appeared beside him at some point in time. Third brother, you've overestimated yourself. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord smiled. Third brother is about to break through to the Supreme Will realm, but he is thinking about this powerful enemy of the illusionary race. If he doesn't care, his breakthrough will be imperfect. Moreover, third brother has already comprehended his first law skill and his strength has reached the pseudo-supreme will realm. He wants to try it out. This battle has already been predestined. God King Heaven Punishment smiled and said, let's take a look first. Third brother hasn't used his will technique yet. It's useless even if I use a will skill. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head, the difference in strength is too great. That's not necessarily true. Since our third brother has chosen to attack, he must be confident. Furthermore, I'm a lord. It's normal for me to have the thought of recruiting him when I see such an expert. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord raised his brows. He raised his hand and deduced. He said in surprise, there are still unknown variables on third brother. This variable is the key to third brother's victory. The God King Heaven Punishment said softly. Third brother, victory is guaranteed. In the sky above the high continent, Zhou Zhou, who was already covered in injuries from revered flames beating, gradually had a rich golden light appear in his eyes. Boom! A shocking aura suddenly erupted from his body, sending revered flame flying. The revered flame looked at Zhou Zhou in surprise. Under this shocking aura, Zhou Zhou's strength, which had already reached the high-level Supreme Will Realm, actually began to rise again. Peak Supreme Will Realm. Quasi-Will Realm. When Zhou Zhou's strength rose to the quasi-willpower level, his strength stopped increasing. At that moment, he was emitting golden light from his entire body. Behind him was the phantom of a star on the map of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's territory. He looked like the ruler of the heavens. Zhou Zhou stretched his muscles and a dissatisfied expression appeared on his face. Even though King had advanced to a low-level willpower skill, it was still unable to allow his strength to break through to the low-level willpower level. With a thought from him, the information of the willpower skill appeared. Willpower skill name, King. Willpower skill class, low-level Supreme Will Realm. Introduction: as a true God spirit on the Lord's law path, you can mark 100% of the territorial subjects and control everything they have, including appearance, bloodline, skills, weapons, law skills, and even illusory fate. When you control everything that the marked subject has, the subject doesn't have to suffer any negative effects. Chapter 1872 Killing Revered Flame, 1. Quasi-Will Transcendence Level. It had once again caused all the spectating experts to exclaim when Zhou Zhou's strength reached this level. Previously, they believed that Zhou Zhou had quasi-will transcendence level strength. It was only with the enhancement of strength, will holy artifacts, law skills, and lord talents that Zhou Zhou had quasi-will transcendence level combat strength. He had reached the quasi-will transcendence realm in terms of pure strength. Coupled with other aspects, Zhou Zhou might already have the strength infinitely close to the level of will transcendence. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Zhou Zhou was still no match for Revered Flame. As expected, when the Revered Flame saw Zhou Zhou's current strength, he still smiled faintly and said, even though he was a little surprised, "That's all. Freeobnovel.c Sigma. I can give you time to use all your methods." He looked confident that he would win as he spoke. Zhou Zhou shook his head and said frankly, "I don't have any other means at the moment. If you want to kill me, you'd better do it now." The Revered Flame felt that his words were strange, but he could not help but laugh coldly. "Have you given up? That makes sense also. If it were me, I would also give up on dealing with a low-level enemy with a transcendent will when I was weak. The Supreme Will must have made a mistake. Why would he choose a fellow like you as his successor who didn't even measure his opponent's strength before the battle and directly came to his doorstep? If it were me, I would at least wait until my strength has completely advanced to the Supreme Will realm before challenging an expert like me. Now that you've given up, then I'll be benevolent and send you on your way. Don't worry, I'll make sure that you won't be revived by the Supreme Will. You will fall completely. The Supreme Will must be very sad to see you fall. You were nurtured by him at such a great cost after all." The Revered Flame laughed out loud. Even though he had been imprisoned under the High Continent, he could still observe the situation in the High Continent and even a portion of the myriad worlds. He had been watching the entire Lord of all Races contest held by the Supreme Will. It was precisely because of this that only then did he understand how precious a successor like Zhou Zhou was. It was no exaggeration to say that he would not exchange God King Heaven punishment and Spring Autumn Dharma Lord for a common people's regal. In the eyes of a low-level expert like him, it was obvious that Zhou Zhou had more potential, was more worthy of being chosen, and was more worthy of high hopes. At the thought of this, he thought of how the Supreme Will would be heartbroken to lose the common people's regal, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt a perverse and twisted sense of satisfaction. This is the feeling of revenge. He lamented inwardly. Then, he instantly appeared in front of Zhou Zhou and punched him in the face. A shocking aura and willpower condensed from his fist. It was as if it wanted to split the sky and earth, blowing up Zhou Zhou's head. As a martial arts expert, Zhou Zhou's reaction was extremely fast. He immediately raised his hand to block the other party's punch. Whoosh! The purgatory sacred flame was transmitted from the other party's body and instantly burned Zhou Zhou's entire body. Even though Zhou Zhou quickly absorbed all the purgatory sacred fire on him with the myriad method star palm, he still frowned slightly. So strong! It was even stronger than before. Was this revered flame's true strength? There was no time to think. The revered flame's attacks were continuous. In less than a moment, Zhou Zhou was covered in injuries. Even though the supreme sacred body could quickly recover his injuries, the situation was still very serious. Most of the experts who were watching the battle revealed worried expressions. A small number of people were watching coldly from the sidelines or secretly mocking Zhou Zhou for overestimating Ilimself. However, the revered flame, who was in the middle of the battle, felt that something was wrong. This was because he realized that even though he had beaten Zhou Zhou until he was covered in wounds, he was completely unable to return the favor. However, he didn't see any panic on the other party's face. Instead, he was calm. It was as if the crisis that he had created wasn't considered a crisis at all. Could this fellow have some trump card that he had yet to use? Revered Flame thought to himself in shock. Even though he looked down on Zhou Zhou, he had never underestimated Zhou Zhou. If Zhou Zhou could really be looked down upon, the Supreme Will wouldn't have chosen such an idiot as his successor. Which meant the common people's regal didn't panic now. He definitely had a trump card that he didn't know about. The revered Flame immediately realized the problem. His eyes hardened. Forget it. If he was too slow, there would be changes. He wanted to deal with Zhou Zhou quickly, then escape from this place and return to the illusionary world. I suddenly pushed Zhou Zhou away. Then, he floated in the sky and looked coldly at Zhou Zhou. The next move is my strongest will skill. Ever since I came to your supreme great cosmos, I've only used it on the supreme will. You'll be the second guy to face it. Ilis' voice rumbled, shocking the myriad worlds. Zhou Zhou's expression turned solemn. He was all prepared to defend or escape. The revered Flame raised his right hand high. The terrifying power of true fire gathered in his right hand. As the pressure spread, the power of the true fire gradually formed a spear of true fire. The true fire spear emitted a terrifying pressure. It only existed there and had yet to attack, but it actually made Zhou Zhou feel a terrifying sense of danger. Chapter 1873 Killing Revered Flame, 2. Zhou Zhou's expression turned serious. What a powerful will skill! With this move alone, if he didn't have any other means to protect him, he would definitely die. Be it their main bodies or clones, as long as they received this true fire spear, they would instantly disappear from this world, leaving no traces of the existence of the common people's regal. When the time comes, Zhou Zhou could only evolve into a special supreme will realm existence through the Lord talent of the Lord of Void, the Lord of Void. That was naturally not what Zhou Zhou wanted. Fortunately, I've finally completed the self-protection methods I've prepared. Zhou Zhou smiled and his expression suddenly turned solemn. 19. Synchronize the chaotic heart body. Sure. A faint voice sounded in his mind. 15 minutes ago, in the abyss of the myriad worlds chaos sea, Zhou 19, who was cultivating the chaotic heart body technique in seclusion, slowly opened his eyes. Il could not help but smile as he sensed Li's new physique chaotic heart body. I've finally succeeded in cultivating this chaotic heart body technique. Currently, I already have a low-level Supreme Will Realm Chaos Heart Body. Even though it's only the lowest level chaotic heart body, it has already given me the qualifications to use transcendent techniques and holy artifacts. Me, the other clones, and the main bodies can now use transcendence level methods to greatly increase our combat strength. At this moment, He heard Zhou Zhou's call. Zhou 19 smiled and said to himself, looks like I've mastered it just in time. Then, let's start synchronizing the chaotic heart body. As this thought arose in Zhou 19's mind, starting from Zhou Zhou, from Zhou fight to Zhou 19, there were a total of 19 clones. Their divine bodies shook and began to fuse the chaotic heart body into their supreme sacred body. Yes, it was integration, not transformation. Even though the chaotic heart body was very strong, it was naturally far inferior to the supreme sacred body. However, the supreme sacred body could tolerate everything and had unlimited potential. It was still easy to perfectly integrate the chaotic heart body into the supreme sacred body. It's too slow. Zhou Zhou sensed the speed at which the chaotic heart body fused and frowned slightly. At this rate, it would probably take 100 years to fuse the chaotic heart body into the supreme sacred body. If he were to wait for such a long time, there would be nothing left of his grave. His hands began to quickly form a time seal. He had a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert under him called the Space-Time Will. It was the Space-Time Will that he had subdued from Tianjun's corpse. The Will of Space-Time wasn't only good at summoning the alternate timeline's main body to fight for him. In fact, he was best at the three classic will skills of space-time, time acceleration, time deceleration, and time stasis. Now that Zhou Zhou had used King and augmented all his subordinates on himself, he naturally grasped everything that the will of time and space possessed. This included the high-level Supreme Will Realm will skill, time acceleration. At this moment, the will skill that he used was this will skill. Time acceleration. Zhou Zhou hollered. At the same time, other than Zhou 19, all the clones under he also followed suit. They used time acceleration will skills with Zhou Zhou to accelerate the integration speed of the chaotic heart body. Time passed quickly, and 100 years felt like a dream. In the blink of an eye, the chaotic heart body perfectly fused into Zhou Zhou's supreme sacred body. At this point, his supreme sacred body also had the ability to use high-level holy artifacts. Furthermore, he didn't have to specially send a clone to cultivate the chaotic heart body in the future to raise it to a higher level. He only needed to focus on upgrading the supreme sacred body and integrate it into the chaotic heart body of the supreme sacred body. Naturally, it would upgrade along with it. It would not even be a problem for him to advance to the eternal immortal realm. This had already exceeded the limits of the chaotic heart body. The limit of the chaotic heart body was only the constitution of an high-level will transcendence level. A chaotic heart body of this level could even use 10-20% of the power of an immortal holy artifact. After surpassing this limit and reaching the eternal immortal realm, the chaotic heart body could already completely control the full power of one or even more immortal holy artifacts. I had really reached that level. With the supreme sacred body of the eternal immortal realm and the chaotic heart body of the eternal immortal realm, Zhou Zhou was not weak even among eternal immortal realm experts. He shook his head and eliminated the unnecessary thoughts in his mind. What eternal immortal realm chaotic heart body? He had to get through this first. With a thought, a dark golden rod appeared in his hand. This staff was a low-level will holy artifact that he had obtained from Tianjun's corpse. It was called the Myriad Soul Stick. It was originally just a low-level will holy artifact. Later on, with the help of the Supreme Luck, it advanced to the low-level beyond holy artifact with an extremely low probability. This Myriad Spirit Soul Stick was forged with 10,000 will origin cores at the high-level Supreme Will realm as the main materials and many supplementary materials at the transcendent level of will. However, even so, it was only made into a low-level holy artifact. It could be seen how difficult it was to create a holy artifact. Zhou Zhou held the Myriad Soul Stick as the willpower in his body continuously surged into it. After consuming the willpower of 1,000 Supreme Will Realm experts, he felt that he could barely control the Myriad Soul Stick. Zhou Zhou sensed the remaining willpower in his body. There was still about 90% left. 9 breaths. Zhou Zhou. This. He had to defeat Revered Flame within 9 breaths. Otherwise, once the time passed, the willpower in his body would be completely exhausted. At that time, he would be powerless to fight. At that time, he could only let his clone go on stage for him. A clone could fight for 9 breaths of time. The 19 doppelgangers could fight for a total of 171 breaths, which was nearly 3 minutes. As long as the Revered Flame did not have any other trump cards, it would definitely be enough for Zhou Zhou to deal with him. At the same time, the Revered Flame's True Fire Sacred Spear was also completely prepared. He looked at Zhou Zhou below as if he was looking at a dead person. To be able to die under my famous transcendence technique, a mere pseudo-supreme will realm expert like you is already enough to be proud of. After you die, repent for your arrogance. The revered flame suddenly noticed the myriad soul stick in Zhou Zhou's hand. The willpower on it told revered flame that was a low-level holy artifact. A pseudo-supreme will realm actually has a low-level holy artifact. The surprise and greed in revered flame's eyes were simply uncontrollable. Wasn't this supreme will treating this successor a little too well? Why did he give such an extremely precious treasure like the holy artifact to his successor? If you give it to him, will he be able to use it? The revered flame could not help but lick his lips. It doesn't matter. I can use it if he can't. It just so happened that after he killed Zhou Zhou, he was a little worried about whether he could escape from the high continent and return to the illusionary world. However, if he had the help of a holy artifact, his chances of escaping would increase by at least 20%. At the thought of this, he could no longer suppress the fire in his heart as he shouted, "Junior! Hand the treasure over to me obediently. Don't resist. I can give you a chance to reincarnate." With that, seeing that Zhou Zhou had no intention of agreeing, he sneered and threw the true fire sacred spear he had condensed at Zhou Zhou. "Humph! If I kill you, that transcendent holy artifact will still be mine," he thought weakly. In the blink of an eye, the true fire sacred spear arrived in front of Zhou Zhou and pointed at his head. Zhou Zhou held the myriad soul stick in his hand and shattered the true fire sacred spear. Then, he teleported in front of revered flame and struck his head. After the revered flame condensed the true fire sacred spear, the power in his body had been completely exhausted. He could only watch helplessly as the rod struck his brain, shattering his heart of transcendence. Then, his vision completely fell into darkness. Why would the revered flame died before he could finish his last words? Chapter 1874 Breaking Through to the Supreme Will Realm. 1. After revered flame fell, all the powerhouses in the myriad worlds fell silent for a moment. They looked at Zhou Zhou and then at the fallen revered flame, their faces filled with disbelief. He fell just like that? A dignified Supreme Will Transcendent Realm expert was killed by a pseudo-Supreme Will Realm expert who had not even reached the Supreme Will Realm? What kind of joke is this? Can one fight above one's level like this? This kind of cross-realm battle was simply opening up the myriad worlds, the precursor to the ultimate void great cosmos. They are 100% sure that Zhou Zhou was definitely the first existence in the entire ultimate void cosmos to kill a will transcendent level expert with strength below the Supreme Will Realm. The unprecedented number 1. His willpower transcended. An absolute will that transcended. All the experts only had this thought in their hearts. With such a battle record, if anyone dared to say that they did not have the will to transcend, they could drown the person who said that just by cursing. They suddenly remembered that they had said that it was impossible for the common people's regal to defeat this low-level willpower expert, and their faces immediately heated up. So it was not that they were overestimating themselves and wanted to prove that they were stronger than God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. They suddenly remembered that they had said that it was impossible for the common people's regal to defeat this low-level willpower expert, and their faces immediately heated up. So it was not that they were overestimating themselves and wanted to prove that they were stronger than God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. It was because they really had the ability to prove this, so they did it openly. He was actually like a clown, making sarcastic remarks at the side, saying that the other party did not have the strength to forcefully pretend. Great, this was a slap in the face in the modern world. While they felt ashamed, they also felt endless reverence and admiration for Zhou Zhou. Not to mention anything else, now, this third reserve of the Supreme Lord had indeed performed at the same level. He had completely surpassed the God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord and became the first in terms of potential. Back then, God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord could not defeat a willpower expert before reaching the Supreme Will Realm. The common people's regal did it. This was strength. From this, it could be seen that the Supreme Will's judgment in choosing a successor was indeed unquestionable. Who wouldn't be envious of this successor? These thoughts flashed through the minds of countless experts watching the battle in the myriad worlds. Then, they immediately prepared 2 letters of congratulations. Then, he sent a letter of congratulations to the common people's regal. Congratulations to the common people's regal for killing the illusionist clan and removing a huge harm for the supreme great cosmos. At the same time, he became the number one in the supreme great cosmos with potential. There was hope for his will to transcend in the future. Another congratulatory letter was sent to the Supreme Will. It congratulated the Supreme Will on having such an outstanding successor. There was a chance for the master and disciple to transcend in the future. Subsequent existences below the Supreme God level were not qualified to send it to the Supreme Will. Only Supreme Will realm experts were qualified to send this letter of celebration to the Supreme Will. The Supreme Will realm experts were flattered. They did not expect the Supreme Will realm expert, who had always been cold, to take the initiative to reply to them. Because of this, they was even more certain of the importance of the common people's regal in the Supreme Will's heart. On the other side, the God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. He hasn't reached the Supreme Will realm yet, and his will has only just crossed over to the Supreme Will realm. He can actually use a transcendent holy artifact. Let's not ask where this transcendent holy artifact came from for the time being. It's already terrifying enough to be able to use a transcendent holy artifact that's a level higher. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord smiled. The God King Heaven Punishment hesitated and said, I think I've seen such a method somewhere before. Oh right, I remember now. Back then, the Chaos Will had a similar aura. Third Brother should have grasped the inheritance method of the Chaos Will, which is why he can use a holy artifact that transcends realms. So it's Lord Chaos Will's method back then. No wonder. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord clicked his tongue. The Chaos Will was the creator of the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord. The Chaotic Will at its peak could only be killed by the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord. It could be seen how terrifying the Chaos Will inheritance was. As for Zhou Zhou, who had the inheritance of the Chaos Will, it seemed understandable that he could use a holy artifact that transcended realms. I can use the transcendent holy artifact because I have a future body at the same time. I can rely on the power of my future body to forcefully control the transcendent holy artifact in advance. Big Brother can use the transcendent holy artifact because his will is extremely domineering. He can even forcefully subdue the transcendent will of the holy artifact. That's why he can use the transcendent holy artifact. Third Brother can actually do it too now. Tisk tisk. Now, the three of us are all reserve armies of the Supreme Lords with willpower that transcends combat strength. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord did not feel jealous because of this. Instead, he was very satisfied. Only such a Zhou Zhou was qualified to be on par with him and God King Heaven Punishment. If the common people's regal was not as strong as them and was still on par with them. In a short period of time, it could be said that the other party had only risen for a short period of time and did not have enough cultivation time to make up for this gap. However, once a long time passed and the other party's strength still failed to catch up to him and God King Heaven Punishment, even if he and God King Heaven Punishment did not say anything, the relationship between the two sides would definitely be distant. It was not that they despised the weak, it was just that the existences of different levels were not suitable to stand together. Chapter 1875. Breaking through to the Supreme Will Realm. 2. Keeping a distance was the best choice. This was also the reason why even though the Lord of 10,000 Evils, God King Heaven Punishment, and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord were all Supreme Lord reserve armies, their relationship was rather cold. The absolute difference in strength made the Lord of 10,000 Evils automatically distance himself from these two brothers. These two brothers did not stop him and chose to silently admit the existence of this difference. Such an outcome was good for both sides. At this moment, the God King Heaven Punishment suddenly sighed. Third Brother has now perfected his Dao fruit and his heart is perfect. He can advance to the Supreme Will Realm without any flaws. Before he advanced to the Supreme Will Realm, he was already able to kill a low-level willpower expert. After he truly advances to the Supreme Will Realm, his strength will probably increase again. Maybe. I can't even protect myself in front of a middle-level willpower user. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord hurriedly looked over. As expected, after Zhou Zhou killed Revered Flame, he did not even have time to retrieve the other party's corpse. He could only put away the other party's corpse and return to the Reincarnation Sacred Palace to begin Eli's breakthrough. Rumble. At this moment, all the stars in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos and even the Crimson Great Cosmos next door dimmed. Only the two Supreme Stars, the Sun Star and the Great Lunar Star, suddenly emitted a dazzling golden and silver light. This golden and silver light were like the two poles of yin and yang in the starry sky of the two universes, each occupying half of the world. Suddenly, the light they released quickly condensed again, finally condensing into a golden secret pattern and a silver secret pattern. They were branded on Zhou Zhou's shoulders. Zhou Zhou's body trembled as he felt a great power surge into his body. However, not only did this power not hurt him, but it was also rapidly strengthening his transformed will, physical body, and will origin power. After the enhancement, even if it was not the supreme sacred body, the physical body condensed by Zhou Zhou's will, the power of will in his body, and the will skill used by the power of will were more than 50% stronger than the other supreme will realm experts. Zhou Zhou had an epiphany. It turned out that the Supreme Star, Sun Star, and Great Lunar Star were not unique to the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos. Instead, in every Great Cosmos in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, there was a pair of Supreme Star, Sun Star, and Great Lunar Star that represented the dual forces of Yin and Yang. Moreover, the Sun and Great Lunar Stars in every Great Cosmos would produce a pair of Supreme Will Realm experts in the Sky Regional Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar. They would jointly maintain the balance of Yin and Yang in the Great Cosmos. They seemed to be manifested from the will of the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. They were very respected in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. No wonder the Supreme Will treated Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar so specially. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. These two regals probably had unfathomable backgrounds. The will of the entire Ultimate Void Great Cosmos was probably his background. And the reason why after he advanced to the Supreme Will Realm, the Sun Star and the Great Lunar Star would bless him. This was because the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos had blessed him through the hands of the Sun Star and the Great Lunar Star. To use an inappropriate example, this behavior was like an ancient emperor rewarding his subordinates. It was always the eunuch who brought the imperial edict and rewards to the other party. Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar were the eunuchs with the imperial edict and rewards. Ahem. The reason why the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos would specially reward Zhou Zhou was because he had broken 3 records. In the entire Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, it was the fastest record to advance to the Supreme Will Realm, excluding those who were born at the Supreme Will Realm. In the entire Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, there was a chance of the first person to defeat a willpower expert with a body that was not at the Supreme Will Realm. The strongest newly advanced Supreme Will Realm expert in the entire Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. 3 records. All of them were extremely valuable records. It was not filled with water at all. When the will of the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos saw that such a genius had actually been born in his Great Cosmos, it alarmed him and made his personally bless Zhou Zhou. With these 2 blessings from the Great Lunar and the Sun, even if Zhou Zhou didn't use any other means, he could be considered top-notch among his peers just by relying on the purest power of will. If other methods like the Supreme Sacred Body were included, Zhou Zhou could be considered invincible among his peers. He could even fight those of a higher level. Apart from the above benefits, the will of the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos also acknowledged Zhou Zhou's identity as a Holy King. The title and identity of the Holy King originally came from his supreme and only Lord Talent Holy King. One of its effects was to allow Zhou Zhou to have the identity of a Holy King. This identity made Zhou Zhou extremely famous in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. He was even recognized by countless life forms in the Great Cosmos as one of the future leaders of the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. Even though Zhou Zhou was not very clear about the exact effect of the title of Holy King, the above effect alone made Zhou Zhou feel that it was impressive. As for the will of the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, after it recognized his identity more deeply, if he met the other Holy Kings in the future, the other Holy Kings would tacitly agree that their status would be lower than him. They might even be asked to temporarily listen to his leadership. Before I met other Holy Kings, I didn't know the effect of this deep recognition. Never mind. We'll talk about it later. Zhou Zhou did not mind. He continued to focus on fusing his will technique and the power of his will. Even though his power of will had already reached the Supreme Will Realm, they were like loose sand. Even though Zhou Zhou could use them directly, they were not very powerful, much less imprinted with a mark that belonged to him. As the new will technique took the initiative to fuse with the willpower of the Supreme Willpower Realm that he had long achieved, Zhou Zhou could clearly sense that his willpower, which was originally scattered like sand, seemed to suddenly have a core command and gradually condensed. It became stronger and easier to use. This feeling was completely different from when Zhou Zhou used the power of the Supreme Will Realm. Zhou Zhou was completely immersed in the feeling of controlling the power of will. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. Zhou Zhou opened his eyes. At this moment, he did not seem to reveal any pressure at all, as if he was an ordinary person without any extraordinary tier power. No one could tell that this was a Supreme Willpower Realm expert who stood at the peak of the universe. Supreme Will Realm. I've finally reached this realm. Zhou Zhou felt. His body of will, the surging power of will in his body, and the will. Origin core in Eli's brain. A smile appeared on his face. With a thought, a nomological line appeared in front of him. These nomological threads were compiled into the entire Supreme Great Cosmos and formed the bottom-level rules of the Supreme Great Cosmos. What ruled this bottom-level rule was the origin of the Supreme Great Cosmos, which was the Supreme Will. The law is the weapon, and the will is the emperor. The current me is already standing on the laws. Zhou Zhou chuckled. He had a thought. His first willpower skill King's information appeared in front of him. Willpower skill name, King. Willpower skill class, low-level Supreme Will Realm. Introduction: as a true God spirit on the Lord's law path, you can mark 100% of the territorial subjects and control everything they have, including appearance, bloodline, skills, weapons, law skills, and even illusory fate. When you control everything that the marked subject has, the subject doesn't have to suffer any negative effects. After reading it, Zhou Zhou couldn't help but click his tongue. If you enjoy the content in this channel, support me in Ko-fi, so I can upload more videos. The link in the description.